Marcel Hay? Here. Norvell?
Here.
Peters?
Here.
Raffanan? Here.
Madam Clerk, since we are hybrid, do we need to read the please take notice?
No, but I will say that this meeting is being presented in a hybrid format, both in person at Town Hall and via Zoom. The Zoom link is listed on page 1 of the agenda. And to speak during public comment portions of the agenda via Zoom, please join the meeting and use the raise hand feature when the mayor or acting mayor calls for public comment on the item you wish to address.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Under agenda review, we have 2 items. We'll be moving on closed 9C to 9A and 9A to 9C. And then we have one more. I think it was at the last meeting, I had a procedural error that was completely my fault in the with the appointment of the Planning Commissioner Scott Dietz. So, Madam Clerk, we can address this under Mayor's recognitions, correct?
Yes, if you would like to add an urgency item to that item number 1, you can have it a 4/5 vote of council to add it, and then you can take a vote on it.
And we can do all that under Mayor's recognitions? Or?
Yes, that's normally where it would go.
Thank you very much. I could not read my own notes, so thank you for that. Brings us to Mayor's recognition and announcements. We have a pretty important one here today. 1A, introduction and swearing in of Police Chief Neil Cervenka. Madam Clerk, if you would. Chief, please.
Chief, if you would raise your right hand, please. Do you, Neil Cervenka, solemnly swear that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that you will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that you take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which you are about to enter?
I do.
And do you understand that as a public employee, you are a disaster service worker pursuant to Government Code 3100 and 3102, and that you are required to take this oath before entering the duties of your employment? And in the event of natural, man-made, or war-caused emergencies which result in conditions of disaster or extreme peril to life, property, and resources, that you are subject to disaster services activities assigned to you by your supervisor? Excellent. Sign here. For you,
Floor is yours, Chief.
Well, thank you all so much. We had people from Milwaukee coming up. We're confident to help partner in crime for the last 22 years when we got hired together. My family that came from all over California, my dance family that taught me how to dance so I could raise money for charity. My friends that have been like brother and sister and coached my son in Little League and taught me to be a coach and taught me valuable life lessons that I carry through to this day. My Peace Officer Memorial Group friends that have helped me learn how to work with police survivors of spouses of where their police officer, husband or wife, has been killed, and they've become great friends along the way. And my parents and sister and brother-in-law who kept me in line all those years. And thank you, Jill, for helping me with my resume for this, because it was fantastic. Most of all, my wife and son, Alex, and daughter, Samantha, who have endured a life of being a police officer's family for 22 years. And the late nights, the missed birthdays, the missed holidays, the running out the door when we have a family party, the understanding that when my phone rings and I head off to the office to take a call, it's important, and for sharing me with the community and sometimes the country for 22 years. I cannot thank you enough. Thank you to City Council for having your faith in me and your confidence in me that I can carry out the tasks which you need. Thank you to Dave Spar, I see him up there, and John Nolte for guiding me and mentoring me along the process. And I'll leave you with this: to the community of Fort Bragg, I commit to concern for this community and all the issues that affect it. I commit to compassion for all segments of this community, regardless of status. And I commit to courage to do the right thing, no matter if it's difficult. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief, very much, and welcome. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We have a large member of our police department here. We have the county sheriff's department here. We have our district attorney here. So I think you can see that we are a community and everybody's welcoming you. So job well done. And again, thank you for being here. Thank you for choosing Fort Bragg, truly. Okay. We are going to move on to... Yes, please. So what I need to do here is we are allowed to add something to the agenda late. It takes 4/5 vote of council to do it. I think the emergency that we have here is to have a fully seated planning commission. We all understand the importance of our planning commission. So therefore, I would request a motion and a second to add item which would be 1B, and it would be the appointment of Scott Dietz to Planning Commission.
I'll make the motion then that we add item 1B to the agenda, that being the appointment of planning commissioner or potential planning commissioner Scott Dietz.
Second.
Madam Clerk, we have a first by Councilmember Peters and a second by Councilmember Raffinen. If you could take roll, please.
Raffinen,
Yes.
Morcel Hay,
Yes.
Alvin Smith,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Norvell.
Yes, thank you. So again, for procedure and process here, Madam Clerk, 1B is now up. Is that correct? We can,
Correct.
okay.
We'll need a new motion second.
So
Place it on the Planning
We'll
Commission.
entertain a motion to appoint Scott Dietz to Planning Commission.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Again, Madam Clerk, a motion by Councilmember Peters, a second by Councilmember Raffinen. If you could take roll, please.
Raffinen,
Oh, excuse me, 1 second. If we could open it up to the public, please. Is that correct?
on an appointment. It's not a conduct of business item, but I'll leave it to Keith if he would like it to open up to the public.
Yes, the public should have an opportunity to speak on this item.
Thank you. And if we could get Mateo to turn the volume up in the room, please. So we will open up 1B to the public. for comment on Scott Dietz' appointment to Planning Commission? Anyone? No? Okay. Madam Clerk, we do have a first and a second. If you could take roll, please.
Rappanen,
Yes.
Morso
Yes.
Alvin Smith,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Norvell.
Yes. Wonderful. Thank you. Keith, are you satisfied with that?
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Okay, brings us to item number 2, public comment on non-agenda items. Anybody in the room like to speak on non-agenda? Madam Clerk, do you have anybody on Zoom that would like to speak?
Yes, if you're attending via Zoom and wish to speak on a non-agenda item, please use the raise hand feature now. First is Jenny.
I'm on. You can hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I was just wondering if maybe more often there could be updates to the different ad hoc committee meetings. So the full council as well as the public kind of knows what's going on instead of reading about an ad hoc plan in a upcoming agenda item. A lot of people are asking like what's going on or when were these things decided, but there's not a lot of updates from the ad hocs. So I just think that would be really helpful. Thanks.
Absolutely, and thank you. And just to remind, if anybody ever has a question about what council is up to or anything that may go on in ad hoc, all of our emails are available on the city's website, and they can certainly email us any questions that they have. Madam Clerk, is there anyone else?
I see one, J. McMartin Rosenquist.
Good evening, council members and staff. I am really thrilled to see that on Wednesday you have an application for a new brewery. I think that a new brewery, a third brewery in our town, is going to bring so much more tourists here to our town. I host couch surfers, and I've hosted them for several years, and they've come many years just to see our breweries. So I hope that the Planning Commission will be able to approve the new brewery at the old Sears building. I think it's wonderful. I also wanted to welcome the chief, although I wasn't available to go downtown. And I'm looking forward to see who's going to run for the next city council. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk?
Any other person like to speak on a non-agenda item? Please raise your hand now. No one, Mr. Mayor. Is there anyone in the chamber?
I'm not seeing anyone.
Okay.
So we will move on to public comment on consent calendar. Anyone in the room? We have one. Apologies for the microphone if you don't mind spinning it around.
Hi, it's Jacob Patterson. I just wanted to comment on the draft, contract for the employee union. I was disappointed to see it only at 4% instead of 5%, but my concern is actually about another change that showed up in the red lines where we're changing the salary survey comparable Cs. I actually think that's a mistake. There was a reason why those other non-governmental employers were in there, because they're more likely to be direct competitors for local staffing, and think that it would be appropriate to still include those in the survey. But I'm sure this is the result of negotiations and the union wanted them removed. But I think that's a disservice to the city. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else in the room? Seeing no one, Madam Clerk, you would on consent calendar, please.
If you're attending via Zoom and would like to speak on a consent calendar item, please use the raise hand feature now. No hands, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, public comment on closed session item. We have 3 items. Anyone in the room? Again, we have 1.
Yes, I'm back. Jacob Patterson again. So I'm a little bit concerned. I understand why we're doing it this way, but I don't really think it's appropriate that the particular negotiators we pick for the city. One is in the union, or not the union, the group that the other one is representing the city on behalf of. I think it presents a conflict for both Isaac and Sarah, but it would have been better, in my opinion, to wait for Peggy tomorrow to do it. So that was just my only comment. Thanks.
Okay. Anyone else in the room? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please.
Yes. If you would like to speak on a closed session item, please use the raise hand feature now. I see no hands up, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Brings us to staff comments. Ms. McCormick, I believe you're first.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor. Hello, community. This evening, we have on our consent calendar a offer of employment to Peggy Ducey, and if approved, my announcement is that the interim city manager position is proposed a salary of $76.34.
Okay, thank you.
That's per hour, correct?
Not per day, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, and I believe our city clerk has an announcement as well.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to give an update on the nomination process. As you know, the nomination period opened on Monday and last the 18th, and I have issued 8 different people sets of the election nomination papers. One person has returned them already, and the county elections official has informed me that they certified that nomination paper. And so our council member, Mr. Lindy Peters, is qualified to be on the November ballot. And the other 7 candidates will have now until August 17th to return their papers, because we are extending the nomination period by 5 days. It was the August 12th, but the Vice Mayor, Morcel Hay, has informed me that she is not going to seek re-election. And in that event, we do extend the nomination period by 5 days.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor,
Yes,
we also have a couple of staff comments from Isaac Whitby and John Smith.
wonderful. Mr. Smith, please.
Okay, so Cold Creek Compost is giving away 2 truckloads of compost. That's going to be at the CV Star Center, east, basically the back side of the building, east side of the building. That's going to be on Friday, August 5th and Saturday, August 6th. On Friday, it's from 2 to 7. Saturday, it's from 10 to 2. We're trying to get that out on Facebook and every place else too, just so people can stop by and fill up a truck or buckets, if you like, for your small garden. But that was nice of them to provide that for us. And that's it for that one. We've got a couple of projects that have gone out to bid or request for proposals. One of them is the notice of inviting bids for the soccer fields. That should be out again on Thursday. And then the other one is for the fire department seismic retrofit. That will be out the following Thursday. So this is kind of looking like it's going to be another challenging year to provide services, professional services, and potentially contractors as well. There's a lot of infrastructure money out there, and a lot of people are busy. So we'll keep pushing it. We've done it in the past. Some projects have been out 4 times before we had somebody to accept. So anyway, we'll work through that. Not a big deal. Just as an aside, USDA gave us another $25,000 for one of the PD vehicles. So they just did that out of the kindness of their heart, sounds like. So anyway, we'll take it. We appreciate that. That's general fund dollars, and it's a good thing. I think that's, waste management. A lot of questions about waste management as far as bin pickup. They've been working on the inland around Ukiah area. They expect to be out in Fort Bragg Tuesday or Wednesday to start doing residential bin pickup in our area. I'm not sure if that's the outskirts or just within the city limits. So anyway, they're moving this direction, getting a little bit closer to getting our bins picked up too. So we've all been pushing them, and this is from Waste Management that provided this information. So hopefully we see them.
Wonderful. Thank you
I
for
have a
that.
question for you, John, if you can answer it. Because those bins have been out so long on the street, passerbys and others have taken advantage of a nice, easy access garbage disposal spot. What does Waste Management intend to do if inadvertently, and at no cost to the property owner, but someone who walked by their house, if there's garbage in those bins, however little or however much, do you know what they plan on doing? Are they going to pick them up anyway? Are they going to require the person whose bins they are to take the trash out? And if so, I really don't think that's fair. I just don't know. What do you know?
I don't know exactly, but I know CNS was picking those up for quite some time, and they're trying to stop that. So how that transition works, I'm not exactly sure. But I mean, they need to take their bin. They might just take it full, hopefully. So
Okay.
I don't know that.
We have reporters in the room. Maybe they can dig into that a little bit. I think our community would like to know. It's probably not my place tonight to try and find out, but hopefully we can find out because there's a lot of questions. I get
Yes.
questions every day.
And it's difficult to get information out of Waste Management. We've tried in a number of areas asking for information. That's been very challenging. So
Thank you.
Vice Mayor, I believe you have a question.
Yeah. Last time I saw information from them on the pickups, it said that they were going to be picking up residential in the city on last week. Are they, if it moves out again, I hear you're saying it's probably Tuesday or Wednesday, but if it moves out again, is there any hope of asking or getting Waste Management to communicate out to the customers about when to expect the pickup? Because like Mr. Peters, I hear from a lot of people about their bins, and just a little communication from Waste Management would go a long way.
sure. And what we'll have to probably just do is keep bugging them about
Okay.
it. Steve Shamlin's been the best person to get in contact with for updates, but they're using a contractor. I mean, it's not Waste Management, so it should be separate, and it shouldn't be a problem with a contractor to pick those up. But you know, how fast they're doing it and how excited they are to finish this project, I'm not sure. So, but yeah, we can just bug them every week and get an update.
Thank
Try
you.
to get that out.
That's
Yeah,
great. Thank you.
It's created some problems for a lot of customers. It's not been good.
Is that it, Mr. Smith? Oh, thank you very much. Mr. Whippy, please.
Yes, good evening. I just wanted to make two announcements. One, the LEWAP grant. This is for our utility assistance program. This is administered by North Coast Energy Services in Ukiah. They are now accepting applications. So you could pay. They would pay for water bill up to $2,000. I must note that it is first come, first served basis. Until the funding runs out. As a reminder, the council had postponed water turnoffs through the end of August as we were awaiting for this grant. So this is available. For more information, you could visit the city's website for the finance department or stop over at City Hall. And then secondly, an update from IT. So we've upgraded the 3 cameras here in Town Hall. So you would see an improved image quality for folks on Zoom and on the website. And we'll enhance that in the next couple of weeks to get a 4K resolution to improve that for recorded meetings as well.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. If I could get a favor from somebody in the room and get somebody to close that side door for us, please. Thank you, Julie. Okay, matters from council members. We'll start at the far end this time. Councilmember Raffinen.
Okay. School's starting up soon, and Dave Spar might be able to help with this question about the open grant application for the road safety for the pedestrian countdown, the right hand turn lanes, and the flashing red lights for the crosswalks, because we're having issues last year by Harold Street by the middle school before school and after school. Can you remember?
think that would be me.
That would be
I can
you,
probably
think.
provide some information there. So we do have folks looking at that intersection. Actually, we've got 2 teams of engineers looking at those to provide some recommendations. One of them is for our streets project, and the other was through UC Davis, I believe, as they had a grant, so they actually provided the services for free. So we're working with all of them to try to look at different options for that location. Certainly.
Okay, was there a grant for that or no? Or through them,
No.
like a separate one that we were applying for?
No, not for that.
No.
Not
Okay.
that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you. And I've gotten positive feedbacks for the dryer.
Oh, great.
Positive feedbacks. That's great. Thank you.
And if you hear about grants, you let me know, and we'll pursue them. I get a summary every Monday from the state for a lot of grants, mostly water, sewer, and things like that. But you bet.
All right.
Let me know.
Okay, thank you, John.
Is that it? Okay, thank you. Councilmember Peters?
The Public Works Committee met since our last meeting, and one item on the agenda that we were talking about is possibly creating a tree advisory committee. And Councilwoman Alden Smith can chime in when it's her turn. But I have a couple of people in mind that are showing some interest to sit on that. We haven't actually got together to put it together, but that would be another sort of an ad hoc committee, and the ad hoc committee would be to see if, in fact, a tree advisory committee would be helpful for development projects, so that a developer and a piece of property, if they had something in mind to develop there, if it required some tree removal, that there would be a team of experts that could advise both the planning commission and the developer on what trees are important, what might be a heritage tree, and that sort of thing. So I think we're going to be moving forward with that, and Tess might have some more things to say about that particular item. But I know that especially up there on Cypress Street, the last project, there were some problems there with some tree removal issues, and this is our attempt to try and address those with maybe another small layer, an advisory committee only, a tree advisory committee that might be helpful for both the developer and the people who want to see, trees in Fort Bragg. It's interesting how we have so many trees to the east, but if you ever fly over Fort Bragg, there aren't too many trees in the actual city limits. So anyway, it's an attempt to come to some sort of agreement so that isn't a sticky issue anymore. And then, if I can, Mayor, we did have an ad hoc committee. Bernie and I, the mayor and I, sit on a mill site ad hoc committee. It sort of changed a little bit because we were dealing mainly with Georgia Pacific at the time, but now that the skunk train has taken over that property, we had an ad hoc committee meeting about the Central Trail access, because that property actually still belongs, the actual access to the Central Trail and the chain link fence that takes you out there does not belong to the city, but belongs to the property owner. We met with Robert Pinoli and Chris Hart. Both of them expressed an interest in keeping access available to the Central Trail. So I think that's good news for all, especially those that like to access the trail from downtown. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Vice Mayor, please.
All right. So at the beginning of the month, there was another downtown business meeting here at Town Hall. There have been a few such meetings that have been getting really great turnout. And one of the big things that I heard from a number of folks there was a real desire for the city council to establish the Central Business District as an arts and culture district. There's a lot of passion behind it. There's a lot of energy building in downtown around this idea, and in recognition of, the art galleries and art collectives and murals and alleyway art project. There is a lot happening. So I would like to suggest, instead of bouncing this consideration off of staff at this point, I would like to suggest that we consider forming a subcommittee of the Visit Fort Bragg committee that could incorporate some of these folks from the downtown community to come to put together a plan, essentially, what that would look like to propose to vet through Visit Fort Bragg and then bring to council for consideration. There would be support.
I totally support that.
I do as well.
Yep.
Thank you.
You got my support.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Alvin Smith?
Thank you. Councilmember Lindy Peters already covered some of what was discussed at the Public Works meeting about the Tree Advisory Committee. In the 90s, when I was still working for CAL FIRE, there was a Tree Advisory Committee, and I'm aware of several people that are still in the community that were there, and others are not. And I'm not sure exactly what role they played. I'm trying to get more information on that, but they were advising the city on what trees to plant, for the downtown area or wherever. And, there were some good things and not so good things. So I'm all in favor of having a tree advisory committee that would include professionals as well as in different disciplines, as well as not just city residents, but maybe some 95437 residents that could get into that. So anyway, it's just a start. We would like some direction on whether that was the rest of the council is interested in that. And we don't have any names for you yet. That's going to come to our next Public Works, but I'd sure like some support in the idea, and things like windbreak trees and those sort of things would be identified. And then they don't have any regulatory authority, of course, but they would have knowledge and expertise right at your fingertips. Wouldn't cost anything. So there's that. And Jessica, Vice Mayor, already recognized the Visit Fort Bragg Committee had a meeting, and they are also working on some subcommittees for walking events. And what was the other one? Maps, walking events, maps, signage, to re-establish those little committees. They did a lot. As you know, the signboards, thank you, John, were sanded down and spruced up. That was one of the outcomes of that. And then, we're planning events like a downtown party, maybe visit with Santa again. And those are things the Visit Fort Bragg Committee does, as well as updates by our website people, Idea Cooperative. And when they do those pushes for Restaurant Week or whatever, we sure do get a lot of visitors. So it's always, somebody should always dial in for those, and you get the updates. So I'm going to leave it at that for my update and wait until the next thing that I have to talk about.
Okay, thank you. We will move on to consent calendar. Is there any item on consent that someone from council would like to pull? If not, we will entertain a motion to adopt the consent calendar as presented.
Mayor,
Yes,
I would like to recuse myself. I'm not going to abstain, but I'll recuse myself so that you can vote on the consent calendar. When you vote, I'm going to recuse myself from 5C and 5F.
Okay. So I will entertain a motion to adopt the consent calendar as presented.
I so move.
In a second.
Second.
Madam Clerk, first by Councilmember Alvin Smith, a second by Councilmember Raffinen, with Councilmember Peters recusing from,
5C and 5F.
5C and 5F. Okay. Any discussion on the motion? No? Madam Clerk, if you take a roll, please.
Raffinen,
Yes.
Marcel Hay,
Yes.
Alvin Smith,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes, and again, clarifying, I've recused myself from 5C and 5F.
thank you, and Norville.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Brings us to item 7. We have no public hearing, so on to item 8, conduct of business. 8A, receive, report, and consider adoption of City Council resolution declaring a Stage 1 water alert and implementing Stage 1 water conservation measures. Mr. Smith.
Excuse me one moment, Mr. Mayor, could I have a point of order?
Yes, please.
I believe we skipped item number 6, which is disclosure of ex parte communications. Could you check?
Yes, please. Thank you for that. Does anybody have any items they'd like to disclose under ex parte communications? No, seeing none. Thank you again, Madam Clerk.
Thank you.
Yeah, back to 8A. Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I was hoping not to have to do this year, but we're getting closer on our Know Your River. So back in July of 2021, working with Tabitha, we changed our conservation code a little bit to add an extra stage just for early warning for folks. And that was very successful last year to let everybody know gradually, because it takes time to word of mouth or Facebook or whatever it is to get in touch with everybody and let them know that this is coming. So yeah, we're looking at Stage 1 right now. Fortunately, we had those late rains in the spring, which was great. That really held things off for quite some time, longer than I expected even. But here we are requesting this Stage 1. The Know Your River is currently at 6 cubic feet per second, was 6.75 when I wrote this, which is still 4.3 million gallons per day, which sounds like a lot, but it's dropping about 1.5 cubic feet per week. Eventually it flattens out, hopefully. But we're trying to get ahead of this. The governor did provide they've been talking about different drought areas and things like that, but statewide emergency for water conservation regulations, banning use of potable water for decorative and non-functional grass at commercial, industrial, and institutional properties. As this doesn't really relate to us because we're not an urban water supplier, and most people don't know the definition of that, which is okay. We don't have the population to kick us into that requirement. We still should be mindful of those things also, on everybody's properties, not just industrial and so on and so forth. But so this is a request for a 5 to 10% reduction for the citizens of Fort Bragg and ratepayers, just in preparation for this. And the city staff, just so you all know, we start looking at this generally in February to look at rainfall, what the previous year in the fall provided for us as far as number of inches, how it fell. We look at all that and try to see how it'll absorb into the soils. And that just helps us out with how fast the river flows or source flows will drop off. So we started looking about then. That worked for us a couple of years ago too. So we pay attention to that and really try to get out ahead of it. We kept talking about doing a Stage 1 earlier on because we really didn't have much rain in February until March-ish. We just had those few storms, which was great. But trying to calculate it and figure it out, this is a good time for us to start this up. And as you know, we're still working on our goal of 60 million gallons of water stored, providing 4 months of water, 500,000 gallons per day. So we'll not stop until we achieve that goal at least. I think that's a good start for us. Still have the Summers Lane Reservoir, Everything's prepped and ready for water shortages. Desal's prepped, reservoir's full. Everything is on standby for just this. So fortunately, we're a little bit better equipped than we have been in past years. So we're wouldn't say we're excited about starting that desal up, but if we have to get there, we will. And again, that's our last resort to do that. So we'll see when the high tides come here what effect that is, and hopefully we'll be okay through August and get down pretty low probably in September, October. So that's all I have. Whatever questions you have.
Okay. Anybody on council have any questions for Mr. Smith?
Not a question, just a comment, John. I just want the community to kind of put it in perspective. Back in 2015, when the flow got so low so quickly, we went straight to a stage 3 without any stage 1 or 2, and it caught everybody completely off guard. So thank you very much for your diligence on this issue, and thank you very much. We have a new public works director at this time, not to knock the other person, but it really caught us by surprise, and this time you're prepared. So I just wanted the community to know that there was a burst of competency here. So thank you very much.
And that's the team too. I don't want to take all the credit. Spread that out.
Okay. Any questions for John before we go to the public? No? Anybody in the room like to speak on 8A? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, do you have any hands raised for 8A?
Yes, I have two. First is Jay McMartin Rosenquist.
Sorry. So back in the day, my husband was an engineer in Fort Bragg, and he had the idea that the water kept running through the Noye River, whether you captured it or not. So part of me doesn't understand why you haven't captured part of that water and why you continue to say we have a drought. We have met water running through the Noye River all the time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk?
Yes. Next is Jenny.
Hey there. I'm super stoked we have the stage 1 this year. Gives people the heads up. I think a lot of people see how much water is in the harbor, and they kind of assume that like if they look at Big River, look at all that water, and they assume that that's the amount of water we have coming out of Noyo, not realizing that it's actually salt water pretty far up there. I don't know if there's like some sort of visual aid we could get out to the public so they got that visual of what's really up there versus what is tidewater. But I was wondering if the dam went up at the camp out there by Camp Mendocino. I forget what the name of the camp is, but I was wondering if that went up, and because I've been looking at the flow gauges every day, but I just wasn't sure if they had put that dam up recently. That's all. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk?
I see no further hands raised, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, again, anybody in the room like to speak on 8A? No, seeing none, we'll bring it back to council for discussion and or action. Who'd like to go first?
I'll go ahead and go first. I support this. I think I'm really proud of our community because we have been able to adjust our lifestyle to accommodate less water use in the past, and I know we'll do it again. In answer to Jay McMartin Rosenquist, and John, you can back me up on this too, there may be water in the river, and saltwater intrusion was just brought up by Jenny, so thank you for that. But also, I believe the Chinook salmon, if the flow of the river gets down to a certain point, cubic feet per minute, it affects the spawning of the Chinook salmon, and that could also be a contributing factor to just taking water all the time, even if it's down to 8 cubic inches per minute. We have to respect the wildlife that's there, and so that's part of the equation too. And I could be wrong, but I think I'm right on that. I remember that being part of the whole big picture is protecting the wildlife as well.
Yes, of course. Yeah. Especially with silver salmon and such going up the river. I mean, endangered species. So yeah, we definitely want to keep that river running. And a lot of times, what we'll see at low flows is that saltwater intrusion. I mean, that intake is 4.5 miles up the river, but it's amazing that water gets up that far. So yeah, that helps the salmon push up the river as well on those high tides.
And also, John, and there may be always water flowing, but we only draw what we need out of there, correct?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay.
You betcha. We have two other gravity sources. We use those first.
Right.
And it's really just Noyo River's last of the three.
Right.
But
Okay.
generally we need it daily.
Thank you for that. And I'd like to echo Councilmember Peters' comments about staff being ahead of this. I'm sure the community supports it, and the community did respond very well last year when above and beyond the city was asking for conservation. I'm sure we'll get that again, and it seems like we're ahead of the game this time. So thank you. I support it as well. So what we're after here is to adopt the city council resolution declaring a stage 1 water alert and implementing stage 1 water conservation measures in Fort Bragg.
I move to, so moved.
So moved. Do we have a second?
I'll second that. I'll second that.
First by the vice mayor, Madam Clerk, and a second by Councilmember Peters. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, if you take roll, please.
Yes, may I please confirm who the second was? I thought it was Alvin Smith.
Second by Councilmember Peters. I believe he was.
Peters, oh, okay.
Thank you.
Rappinen,
Yes.
Marcel Hay,
Yes.
Alvin Smith,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Norvell.
Yes. Okay. Thank you again, Mr. Smith.
Thank you all.
Okay. 8B, receive public review draft of City of Fort Bragg former Georgia Pacific Mill Site Economic Diversification Report. Provide council input to be included in the final draft. Ms. McCormick, please.
Thank you. So we all know the city of Fort Bragg serves as the primary commercial center for our coastal region, and historically that has really relied on lumber and fishing industries. And with those industries in decline in the recent decades, we have transitioned into more of a tourist-based economy. And when COVID hit, that was really scary because, you know, we had shelter-in-place orders and we furloughed staff and we sheltered in place. At that time, I reached out to the United States Commerce Economic Development, and we're lucky enough actually to have the person that answered the phone here, Melinda Matson, who's the Northern California representative, and talked with her and said, we need help. We need to figure out how to diversify our economy. And she said, okay, this is the CARES Act fund. This is what you need to apply for. And EDA invested $137,000 for us to create a diversification study from the vantage point of the mill site. We contracted with Regional Government Services, RGS, and worked with Josh Metz and David Spar on the project. And it was just been a really good relationship with them. They've been really invested in this community and looking to find what our assets are, what our obstacles are, how we can get around them. And it's been a real pleasure working with them. Since the Georgia Pacific Lumber Mill operation ceased, our community has put considerable time and energy into what reuse of that site would look like. And the first most magical thing to me, sorry to use the word magical at a council meeting, but that coastal trail that was put in, 3.5 miles of scenic coastline. When I moved here, I was like, whoever had the foresight to do that, I want to meet and I want to work for the city that made that happen. So that is just starts off, anything that happens out there is just the crown jewel. It's really excellent. And looking at what our assets are and the ocean and all these, we just started learning about all these initiatives in the blue economy. And we really started learning from other coastal communities and learning about different technologies and emerging fields that are happening. And you all have experienced, you guys all went to the symposium. Hopefully the community went to the symposium. If not, we built out the website so that now all of the speaker presentations are available on the website. So you can click on them and learn about all these different innovative companies that came up here to tell us what they were doing to inspire us. And I just want to kind of send that out, all those good things out there before Josh gets into the nuts and bolts of what this study looks at. Because there's a lot of heart behind this study. The study is it's a study looking at a strategy and looking at where we might invest our money in order to create an economy here with livable jobs. But behind all of that is all the conversations of how giving everybody in this community has been with interviews, all the folks down in the harbor, the different funding partners that have come up. And it's been a really good opportunity. And I think that we're on the right track. And I'm very fortunate to introduce Josh, who's going to give the presentation. I'll cue you up.
Thank you, Sarah. Council, nice to see you. Members of the public and Melinda, nice to see you here. So we do have a little slideshow, and we have provided a report that's in your packet, and so I'll kind of lean on that. But if you want to, will I see it if it's up there, or am I just gonna?
Well, yes. So
because that would help me be able to tell you next slide.
I'm sorry, I put it up on my screen, but not on everybody else's.
Okay, because I can look at it on my phone.
No, Josh, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Burst of competency. I'll just take the moment to say, working with John, I've appreciated his competency over the time that I've got to know him as well in this study and others. So here's your competency. Okay, so here's this is the first slide, and we'll go to the next one, which is going to tell you about what we're going to cover here. And to begin with, we came in, we had a great introduction from Sarah and the team. There was a great background provided of all the work that had been done around the planning for the mill site. I came from work on the former Fort Ord, so it was a similar site on the coast that needed to be reused. That was a situation that was publicly owned to private. This is private now going to private, although when we came on, it was still questionable who the new owners were going to be. So we, rather than getting into some of the details on all of that, we really focused on what would be, key investments that could be made to yield, new tax revenue, jobs, and benefits for the community, as well as provide some pathways to more diversification in the regional economy. So I think those are outlined in the next slide, which talks about our study goals, about leveraging this prior planning and evaluating potential future development based on a few criteria, this idea of economic diversification, jobs creation, and, could these be persistent economic contributors over a long period of time. So, given your background here of resource-based economy, it was natural for us to continue looking at that. And then really to position the city for future public and or private or philanthropic funding to help spur this development potential. So the next slide, we summarize the community priorities that we uncovered during the process. Remember, this took place over a pretty good period of time, so we had a chance to get to know a lot of the community members and look into some of these past studies. Of course, to John Smith and his concerns, low water use was always a top priority. The connecting of the central business district to the mill site, recognizing the healthy marine ecosystems and the history of the fishing and the Noyo Harbor and all of that. So really trying to find a way to build that into the future, I guess, rather than just looking at it as a past. And entry-level jobs and skilled trades were important, and a lot of interest in workforce housing. And we knew that was there. We didn't dive into it in great depth in this study, but always with an eye that you create a great place, you extend your central business district, you find infill opportunities, and maybe there can be more housing with that. So next slide kind of shows some great pictures of our process, including getting to know the harbor. We spent time with some of your business leaders and political leaders, got to know some of your infrastructure, looking at your very sophisticated water intake system up there in the creek, and spent some time in here in different meetings with the public and hearings. We had a number of engagements. I think our next slide kind of summarizes those, and this is only the ones I could fit on the slide to make it somewhat readable, but there was probably another just about as many that I had to cut off of all the folks that we talked to in this process. Business representatives, your economic development ad hoc committee, the Sherwood Valley Band of Pomo, Harbor District, Mendocino College, and others. You can see them there. the West Business Development Center, Marianne Petrillo was fairly engaged with our work. So this was just really to come up with some focused projects that we would really dive into. And so the next slide shows kind of what we ended up focusing on. 3 key investment ideas: Blue Economy Innovation Hub, which would make use of your, it's shown as that green patch on that map, that big, almost circular right at the end of Maple Street. The Noyo Center for Marine Science. Now, this is a real charismatic project that hopefully a lot of you familiar with, about having sort of a marine science and education center out here on the mill site. And then really from the standpoint of addressing that central business district, extending infrastructure at the end of Redwood Avenue out onto the mill site to create opportunities for new hospitality, retail, and residential. So the next slide kind of dives in a little bit more on just where these 2 Blue Economy Innovation Hub and Noyo Marine Science Center project ideas are located. They're very linked in that one of the key drivers that, or rather obstacles that we uncovered in whether or not this could be feasible is the potential to draw in seawater from the ocean and deliver it to these 2 locations. One being, what would be used for aquarium and research stuff in the Marine Science Center, and the other would be for onshore aquaculture and ocean economy related entrepreneurship in the Blue Economy Innovation Hub. So those are kind of directly west of Maple Avenue. And some of the key issues that we wanted to understand were, what would it cost to build some of these, put these facilities out there? And so, what's a Blue Economy Innovation Hub from the standpoint of infrastructure is basically a pad that has piped in water, power, sewer, broadband that would be able to be leased by companies that would want to use these spaces for their businesses. And so when we did the Blue Economy Symposium and Learning Festival, we heard from companies up in the Humboldt Bay, all the way down to San Diego and Santa Barbara and Central Coast, who were describing how they made use of these spaces and even the demand that is being experienced in one incubator in particular in San Diego. We heard that, hey, if we had facilities for some of these expanding companies that were all permitted and ready to go, that they would come here. And we also heard from the folks in Kona, Hawaii, who operate the National Renewable Energy Lab site there. They have a business model built out very similar to what we're talking about here that is continued to expand and is exceeding the capacity that they have. So basically what would be needed, according to the estimates that we were able to gather during the study process, an investment of around $4.5 million would be needed to deliver the infrastructure to the Blue Economy Innovation Hub zone, and that for the Noyo Center site, which would be connected through, infrastructure is pipes in the ground, so it's going to do a linear run from Maple Avenue to the Blue Economy Innovation Hub, and then out to the point there for the Marine Science Center. That would be an additional $3 million for that infrastructure. And then, of course, the ocean water pipes to get water from the water treatment plant to those would be some additional costs. So in total, taken together, we're looking at $10 to $12 million to build out the infrastructure to power those sites, is what we came up with. Another criteria that we looked at was job creation. Now, this one is one that will be studied in depth in a recently announced award to the Noyo Center, and with West Business Development Center working on a business plan to really establish the jobs potential for the Noyo Center. So what we looked at was The idea of a blue economy innovation hub building off of small firms that could locate here with the jobs count of 5 to 10 people per firm, anywhere from 2 to 4 companies in the beginning, and then kind of growing over time, with the idea of somewhere around 200 jobs, direct and indirect. So that's like those who work directly in a firm and those who might service the firm. Now, what I found doing these feasibility studies is there's looks like science. You can put a lot of numbers up there and charts, but there's a lot of art to it as well. So you kind of have to take that for what it is. We've shown some pictures of the types of work here that people do in maintaining these aquaculture facilities, and even what some of them look like. This is one down in Cayucas that's shown up there on the screen. So this is kind of an industrial format for the production of seafood and seaweed is another big one that they do. So these are some of the findings. There's more to be done on getting into more detail on that. The good news is there's been another investment made by EDA in this question, so the city will continue to benefit from that. The next slide really gets a little more.
Not barking.
Any question? Am I hearing a question or just background? I'll just call
That's
it background.
Please
Okay.
continue. Thank you.
Yeah. So the Redwood Avenue extension. Now this one, is the most tangible in terms of like direct transient occupancy and sales tax increase to the city, but really it would touch on these key interests that we found in the community, the connecting the central business district to the mill site, and opening up these incredible hospitality sites that you guys have here. I mean, it's really amazing when you have a transformation of land use like you have here. First time in 100 years ish, you have access to this land that was previously behind a fence in an industrial yard. Now this is, you look out there and this is like world-class tourism, desirability. So I hope the city can find a way to take advantage of that. So the next slide kind of summarizes some of the findings. Again, a pretty substantial investment in infrastructure, close to $5 million needed to extend about 1,700 feet out onto the mill site. Roads, water, sewer, power, and broadband considered there. With opening up about a 20-acre hospitality and retail site. These were kind of our assumptions in coming up with these numbers. 1 to 200 room hotel, 250 to 500 jobs, and about 700,000 a year in transient occupancy tax. Retail, about 5 acres, 54,000 square feet, and 90 jobs and about $13.5 thousand of sales tax for the city. So those are some of the kind of initial findings that we have here. And then the next slide kind of summarizes these in a graphical form. What I like to think of as a feasibility study that has utility that you can look at and say, what's ready to go and what maybe needs a little more study. And so, again, the good news is most of the ones with the question mark there some of those questions will be addressed in the next round of work. But you can see the summary here, and again, it's in your report. We did, through all of this work and in all the conversations we had, we came up with some continuing recommendations that are outside of this table. And again, I'll be happy to take questions on this now or when I'm finished, but I got probably 2 more slides. So why don't we just get through those? So the next one is a set of recommendations that we thought would be strategically valuable for continuing this inquiry and kind of development. One thing I've seen in doing economic development is it's a continuous process of building awareness and momentum and all of that. So, we're talking about continuing the partnerships with the Noyo Harbor, the Noyo Center, and the Noyo Collective. Those are 3 individual entities with common interests. Pursuing partnership MOUs with the San Diego Blue Tech Innovation Hub and the Humboldt Harbor District, could be strategically valuable to continue to have Fort Bragg on the map of a blue economy focused city, and continuing engagement, productive engagement with the new property owners. And hopefully all of that can come into alignment for a great future for the city. Again, pursuing all relevant public and private and philanthropic funding. I think that you got some real modern themes here that get people's attention. You saw Betty Yee here, our state treasurer, who was passionate about the idea of a blue economy. And I think that alone can continue to yield funding for advancing. It's not simple work that happens instantaneously. It happens over quite a long time period, actually. And then, evaluating and planning for central business district infill development. That's one that kind of came up during the conversations that we had, just the desirability of coming to a town and being able to walk around and go to restaurants, art galleries, walk out on the mill site and enjoy the natural surroundings. So those things all would be helped with that strategy. Resolving the harbor circulation issues. I think there's some options that were looked at and that will continue to be looked at would help that. And then generally supporting robust STEM education so you can build a workforce that can engage in science-driven enterprises. And so with that, I would just conclude here, and definitely happy to take questions, and really appreciate the relationship that we've built here with your city staff, great, competent people, and the council. And thank you, EDA, for the support in getting this done. And working with Marianne has been great. So I think Dave Sparr's on the line, and he really got reintroduced to the city through doing this study. So already I feel like there's been a nice impact made. So I think if you click to the last slide, we'll get a little picture of Dave Sparr up there, even if he's not showing himself on the Zoom. So that's it. I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
Okay, so Josh, what we'll do is we'll entertain questions from council, and then we'll open it up to the public. And if you wouldn't mind sticking around in case they bring up some relevant questions that maybe you could answer.
Happy to.
Thank you very much. Council?
Just one question, Josh. We mentioned a non-intense or intensive water use.
Yes.
I was curious if there was any discussion about a solar farm and a microgrid to provide power, because as you probably know, it seems like we have power outages here on a regular basis, and PSPS events now are creating even more. Just curious if that was ever discussed, if there was ever a discussion of having a power source out there as well to augment the city's power and to provide power for all the infrastructure and the construction out there.
Yeah, I mean
running the businesses and everything else.
Thank you for the question. It came up in cursory conversation. It wasn't something that we studied in depth, but from what I know about microgrids and their growing utility, I'd say it's a great concept to study further and see if it can work. Definitely helps with your resiliency, from a disaster preparedness perspective.
Anybody else have any questions for Josh? None? Okay, thank you. We're going to open it up to the public for comment. Okay. Thank you. Anybody in the room like to speak on this item? Mr. Maroney, please.
Gabriel Quinn Maroney. I really appreciate everyone's work on this project so far. I wanted to mention that I think a blue economy is nice, but we actually need a teal economy. And if we only focus on the ocean so much, we forget about the forests. And really, we are surrounded by the forests on one side and the ocean on the other. And proper management of the forest is equally as important as the ocean, and we should include it equally, I believe. Throughout all the conversations, I don't really hear health being spoken of a lot. But really, the three keys to freedom and the three keys to agency is health first. If we don't have our health, we don't have our wealth. And then the third is political agency. And what the pandemic really taught us is that we need to focus with our economy on health. And I've been working on this project, or at least focused on it since 2008, and continue to champion the idea of a medical university, which when you put something like a medical university, you're going to increase the health of the people here. And we know we have a deficiency in that area. So I would like health to be a central thing along with the ecosystem, of course. I would really appreciate if moving forward that the skunk train people and the city council come together and host an event to really open it up to the public, really before anything else happens. Because I really think we need to hear for due diligence. You know, we have all these ideas in our head, but the best of ideas can come from the most elusive places. So I think we should really open it up and re-engage in that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else in the room? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, if you could open up 8B, please.
Yes, we have Mary Rose Kaczorowski.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to say I see this as an exciting concept for expanding our potential of businesses. As was mentioned, the pandemic, the fires, etc., showed we cannot just focus on tourism. I think workforce housing and the future of our hospital has to be included. And I thought this would be a fabulous opportunity, as the gentleman just mentioned, my colleague who lives in town, housing for the Mendocino College that can move into STEM and medical curriculum. And that's something we are not looking as a solid partnership. Look what Humboldt State University has done. And they're moving into a whole different era. And, you know, and I'm just concerned about the new owners of the mill site that I just don't see how they're going to play into this with all this amazing ideas that have been discussed over the years, and how we could just get out of just the central focus on tourism for tax dollars. And especially, let's look at workforce housing. I just, there's so many part-time seasonal jobs that no one could afford housing here. A lot of people moved here because during the pandemic, they're working from home, they're in tech. I welcome these new people. They're really exciting people that have moved here. People have moved here because of the fires and because of climate change. We got to think about global warming. You know, that's going to be driving more people here too, and retirees. So, and we need the hospital services. We need medical students here. You know, I work at the hospital part-time. Such dedicated people, my colleagues. I'm not a nurse, I'm not a doctor, but I just watch these people just give everything to our community. And some of them are traveling hours to get to work because they can't get housing here. So somehow that has to be part of the picture. But I think this is a fabulous beginning, a fabulous study that has been done. The partners that are coming out of other areas can bring a lot to this. We've been waiting for something like this to happen. And I just hope the Mendocino Railway investors understand that this is something they can be part of and they can contribute to, but it's a bigger picture, not just their picture. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk?
Jenny?
Hi there. It's awesome to see Gabriel there and get his words, because he's always seeing things from lots of perspectives. So thank you, Gabriel. And I agree with everything he said. The other thing I was going to bring up was ask about the solar, which Lindy did. So thank you, Lindy, for bringing that up. I was wondering if during this study, and I'm going to sound like a broken record again, if it was ever brought up to try to preserve the runway whether it's for a future hospital, emergency plane landing if we have a major earthquake or catastrophe. I know there's been talk about moving the No-Yo Center to the end of the runway, which would then make it obsolete. I'm sure there's federal funds somewhere to try to get that fixed, and it's a huge asset. And once we lose it and the opportunity to have it there, it's gone. So I'm just wondering if that was brought up. I know a lot of people actually support getting that runway, at least so like a little plane could land in an emergency, and that emergency is going to happen someday. So, and more public meetings. I know this was a lot of stakeholders involved coming up with this, but we lost all of our public meetings that we were having for the mill site, and the public really feels left out. So more public meetings, please, for input. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk.
Andrew Jordan.
Radio check, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. I agree with the prior speakers generally with regards to the issues that they raise. I think Fort Bragg has basically a unique environment, which is a non-depletable resource, unlike timber and fish. The environment here is one people can enjoy, especially during the summer months, but even during the winter. Basically, it's a geographically isolated area that maintains some distance from the kind of urban development that people experience in the larger cities, which are increasingly affecting people's lives, with people moving to the cities after World War II. With regards to Councilman Peters' concerns regarding power and solar arrays and the like, I think that would complement a desal plant particularly, and the ability to provide more water to the community would be very important, particularly if more people are sought to be here, because unless they've got the water to drink, it doesn't matter how many houses you build, they just will not have the basic utilities in order to enjoy life here. With regards to Mr. Metz's, I believe, comments with regards to, in the draft here on the agenda packet, support robust STEM education in K through 12 curriculum. I think that's a great idea. And even though there's some people who just don't cotton to numbers, that's just not their thing, the ability to understand what science is and isn't, it can be a real asset in a person's ability to evaluate the environment that they're in and the issues that they need to make decisions about. However, the humanities are also very important, as I think the ability to articulate how one thinks and feels is a significant asset to any community, particularly for public participation and the ability to determine how the public sees certain issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, again.
Chris Hart.
Good evening. As a former consultant, I can certainly appreciate the complexity and the scope of what RGS took on, and so I certainly appreciate the effort that was put into it. I do feel that Mendocino Railway's perspective could have been more incorporated, though. It is concerning that even though we're a local company that owns much of the land and is trying to invest millions, we're not considered a stakeholder or an asset. Instead, we're shown as an obstacle. The study states that we interfered with the city's verbal agreement with GP when we used eminent domain in the summer of 2021. It makes no mention of the city's interference 5 months earlier. I have an email secured through the Freedom of Information Act from former city manager Miller to the council on April 27th of 2021. Quote, in the recent conversation, including yesterday with Mike Hart, he has made it clear that they are purchasing the south portion of the mill site and assuming the environmental liability from GP. The scum train would also be responsible for completing the mill pond final RAP. Mr. Hart has also indicated desire and willingness to work with the city, including some sort of transaction that would provide portions of the property to the city. He indicated that the tribe was receiving the property where tribal members live, and it sounded like there may be an additional smaller portion of the south end going to the tribe, unquote. The community appears to have been getting everything needed by working with us, and yet the council opted to interfere with Mendocino Railway's verbal agreement with GP to get all the land for itself. Council members stated that they still expected to get the south parcel and were shocked by our acquisition in November 2021. And yet the city began coordinating an attack on our $24 million federal loan application 1 month before that happened. Similarly, the city filed a lawsuit against Mendocino Railway 1 month before we acquired the parcel. 3 times, the city of Fort Bragg was the aggressor in 2021. One of the reasons to justify your attacks was remediation. Mendocino Railway has always said, though, that we will remediate the property, and we just submitted our plans. Another justification of the study was, it states the lawsuit was to ensure there would be a community-based planning process. The document ignores we're going through that process for several years. Your map on page 12 shows that that was a work we did together. The council stopped the process on January 11th, 2021. You raised concerns that we may not follow such a process, yet you canceled the process yourselves. We have worked within your process. We were open to ways to address those concerns, such as our 2019 discussion with the Coastal Commission, where we were open to designating railroad and non-railroad elements. And in 2021, we discussed with the city manager a developer agreement. In conclusion, I understand we probably see the past differently. However, I hope you can see that it does not make sense for us to try developing property, such as Redwood Avenue, in a town that is suing us. If you believe the plans of the study will benefit our community, then please start working with your best potential partner to make them a reality, instead of continuing your legal war that delays the goals you want to achieve and may make them an impossibility. We want to work with you to benefit the city, our company, and the community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk?
I see no further hands raised, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room? Mr. Patterson?
Hi, it's Jacob Patterson. I was happy to hear that we secured more funding to continue this effort because I think it's important. And as we do that, there's a couple of things I noticed that we're missing that I would recommend the team focuses on. The first one, in the feasibility of these types of projects that we're talking about, is the cost of the underlying land. I didn't see that mentioned anywhere, and that's actually a really significant factor. One that I think it's possible will make the innovation hub not feasible at the end of the day. It's owned by Mendocino Railway or one of their affiliated companies already. I've not heard them express an interest of developing an aquaculture hub or anything down there, and we can plan for stuff, but that doesn't mean it's going to happen. I would just refer you back to our feasibility study for the industrial art center in the dry sheds that we developed, did this time, use grant money to fund, and do we have an industrial art center there now? No. So I'm just a little concerned that sometimes we can plan for things that seem like good ideas, but there are other factors that are problematic. Also, one of the slides talked about political will being checked off already. I don't actually see that here. If you followed the public planning process, the majority of the community wasn't supporting these particular types of development. Most people said they wanted open space, which is not necessarily compatible with some of the stuff that's been proposed. So I just think a little bit more careful consideration and expanding the pool, kind of in line with what some of the other public comments were, to make sure that it's not just an echo chamber of particular stakeholders that have an interest in certain developments, and hear from people that might have an issue, not with the concept necessarily, but with some of the details. For example, I'm a person who thinks the Nago Center sounds like an exciting project, but I'm very troubled by their site plan that puts it right on top of the runway that Jenny kind of mentioned, and also blocks the most ocean views. So things like that will come up in the public permitting process later that could trip up some of these developments and make them very difficult if we don't plan for them now. So, but I'm glad that we're working on this project and we have more funding for it. So, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. And again, what we're after here is council input to be included in the final draft. Vice Mayor, please.
I would just like to make some clarifications real quick. I would just like to point out that this study was initiated at a time when we were in negotiations for that property. So while it is pertinent point, that we're talking about uses on property that we do not publicly control, this was initiated during a time when we were anticipating public ownership, and I think it pivoted beautifully to account for the fact that there is not public ownership at this time, and trying to still find a path forward for the public, for the good of the community, and really to identify how we can move the needle in a constructive way that could build everybody up here. To clarify, due to some muddy assertions, I would just like to mention that the city did begin speaking with Georgia Pacific about the purchase of that property in 2019. And I would also like to clarify very simply that the lawsuit that is in play is simply asking that Mendocino Railway be held to the same health and safety oversight that any developer would be held to. So there are a lot of mischaracterizations of that piece, and since they were just spoken to, I felt it important to clarify the intention here, because it is quite a simple task that we are have undertaken. So with that said, I do want to focus back to the report here. It's very exciting. I really appreciate the comprehensive work that was done here. I agree. I would love to see comments added about a microgrid and energy production. And otherwise, I think this is a really interesting piece. Thank you.
Campus, you said.
Oh, yes. I mean, my thank you. The big picture that I would love to really see here would be embracing the idea of a carbon neutral campus, where we stop siloing all the different end uses and we actually combine a blue economy industrial hub with a focus on restorative aquaculture, along with open space and carbon sequestration and workforce housing, and so where we're taking all these end uses that are far too segmented, and we bring them together into one big vision for a campus that that really could be a decarbonization campus from a lot of different angles. Thank you.
Okay, for me, there's just a few things I'd like to comment on that were in the report, and it revolves around commercial fishing and infrastructure in the harbor. A lot of the things that were spoken of are absolutely needed to keep that going. There's always a lot of talk about a dying industry. It certainly has slowed. I would not consider it dying or even anywhere near being dead. A lot of the fishing stocks that were once considered endangered species, all but one has been removed from the endangered species list, and thus now the quota is up and everybody's allowed to fish them. The things that need to be considered down there is mooring, which there is a lot of, and the Harbor District's done an amazing job of improving their mooring. Processing, we have limited there. We've lost a lot of what used to be there, but I think that's, it's been reduced to scale, what's really needed. But it also needs to be protected. We need an ice plant. The one that we have is being held together, but it's an absolute struggle. That needs to be, considered as well. And then also a fuel dock. We lost our fuel dock. My family's commercial fishing vessel actually goes to Bodega Bay for fuel. If you can believe that, it's actually cheaper for us to go down there when you're buying 3,000 or 4,000 gallons at a whack. $2 or $3 a gallon price can make a big difference. So it's actually more affordable for us to go down there and fish the trolley grounds down there and buy fuel and ice when we get down there. Much rather prefer to buy it here. A lot of what was set up in policy and land use down in the harbor was set in the beginning to protect the commercial fishing infrastructure. And although it's still needed, it's not needed nearly on the scale that it was then. I think the county needs to get their act together in a sense and pay a little more attention to the harbor and change some of the rules to allow more than just anything fishing related, because that's really what it's anything that happens down there now has to be fishing related, and it's just not needed anymore. So it was nice. I guess my point is it was nice to see these things addressed. They are absolutely important, and it looks like you spoke to all the right people in regard to this. So I really appreciate it, because it is important to the fishing industry that these things are maintained. But I think the fishing industry also realizes that the scale that was once needed is not there anymore. And it is a slow down economy, but it is far from dead and far from dying. So thank you for the attempt there and the effort put into the fishing industry. Thank you for that. Councilmember Peters.
Thank you. Thank you, Josh. Really enjoyed what you put together here. Nice visionary statement, pretty much, as to what the potential is out there. And coming off the Blue Economy Symposium, there's still some excitement there as well. So thank you. What I wanted to bring up is that when Georgia Pacific closed the mill in 2002, blew the whistle for the final time and the last shift left, our community was frightened about the future, because at that time the Georgia Pacific Mill not only provided a lot of jobs, but the secondary economy built around the mill provided even more jobs and a great tax base. That was going to be eradicated in one swift move when that last whistle blew. So what we decided to do at that time is to work with Georgia Pacific, because any future development on that land, it was zoned timber industrial, had to be timber related. So for Georgia Pacific to even sell the property, they recognized they needed to work with the city to create a zoning map that would accommodate some future development. I was on the council then, and we began our community meetings. Unfortunately, somewhere in between 2004 and 2010, a lawsuit developed. And in that period, Georgia Pacific stopped working with us. But up until that time, we were working with Georgia Pacific. And we realized that there was a specific plan that we were working on that was going to be issued to the Coastal Commission for their approval so that we could change the zoning on the mill site. In the middle of that process is when the lawsuit occurred. Georgia Pacific stopped working with us because we were involved in an adversarial lawsuit. So then we decided, well, once that lawsuit was settled, the specific plan, which had a lot of work done on it, and I'm glad Marie Jones is hopefully listening to this because she was our planning development director at the time. Once that lawsuit stopped and we realized that the zoning needed to be changed, we had two choices as a city council. The specific plan that we were working on was obsolete. The environmental studies were obsolete. So the choice was either start a brand new specific plan, or you could expedite the process by simply asking for a local coastal plan amendment. That would be easier. It would be cheaper, and it would be faster. So we began working on that local coastal plan amendment for the Coastal Commission. And that's when we had a lot of community meetings and took a lot of community input. And we realized that housing was important. We realized economic drivers were important, some jobs out there as well. And we began to develop a vision for the mill site as a community. True, open space was mentioned, wildlife corridors were mentioned, and we tried to accommodate that within our vision. So the community really gave us a good idea of what they wanted, and we were working with them as we moved forward. When Western Railroad bought the property, The problem we had was that they weren't too concerned about the zoning change, I don't think, because they felt, this was brought up by the vice mayor, that because they were a railroad, they could pretty much do what they wanted out there. And they owned the property. They weren't interested in trying to see what the community wanted, I thought, at first. Now I'm going to admit that they did start working with us. And we did start developing. They would come to us with plans, and they'd ask for community input, and things seemed to be going pretty well. And it looked as though we were working together at that time. But they only owned the north portion of the property. And we were working with them talking about the north portion of the property. And I thought we were working pretty well together. We were talking about housing. They had a nice hotel that they were talking about and some other things. We started focusing on the south part of the property at that time. And one of the things we realized is that we owned a piece of property fairly close to the wastewater treatment plant. The Noyo Center had expressed an interest in acquiring that property so that they could develop that marine research center that was mentioned in Josh's report. So that's why the location is where it is. That particular piece of property we deeded to the Noyo Center with a caveat saying that if you don't do anything within the first 10 years in terms of developing an actual 501(c) and trying to develop that property and come up with some plans for that property, it'll go back to the city. Well, they kept their bargain, and they've got some plans out there. And we saw them, what was it, last meeting, I think. So we thought, that's great. That'll be one nice cornerstone out there. There was another piece of property there as well that we thought could be called urban reserve, not necessarily zoned for housing or anything else, but urban reserve. And what that meant is if you wanted a hospital, or if you wanted a police station, or something that would have benefit to the community and not necessarily a business, that's where you would put it. And it made sense. Our police station was down there in the south part of town, pretty much straight across that property. And so we had a vision there. I had knee replacement in 2018 and talked to Dr. Bowen in Willits, and he said, you know what, that'd be a perfect spot for an urgent care center. And along with that, the urgent care center, you could develop out into an actual hospital with specialized treatment. And he said right now, joint replacement, because of the silver tsunami, is just absolutely inundating everybody that practices the art. Everyone's getting a shoulder replacement, a knee replacement. And he said that would be a good place to maybe satellite off of that urgency care center. So I brought it up. We talked about it. All these things were talked about and everything happened. This was 2018, friends, when I made this comment. So for us to be accused of suddenly having an interest in that southern piece of property simply because the skunk train bought it and now we were opposed to that is incorrect. We were working on it. We had a vision similar to what we've heard tonight from some of these people. All that right now is up in question because California Western Railroad owns the property, or Western Railroad, whatever their name is. And I wasn't trying to make light of their name. We'll just use the skunk train. And it's kind of difficult for me to be accused of being hostile. I don't think I've ever said anything hostile about the skunk train. I don't think I've ever showed any hostility as a council member. So what we see here tonight is a vision that this community had. And it's a continuation of that vision put in form where we can understand the economics and we can understand the potential. That's all this is. And the reason, as was pointed out by the vice mayor, that the railway is not mentioned in this is simply because at the time when we started this, we had ideas, we had a vision, and having the skunk train come off of the depot right here on the north part, hey, fine. We were working with them. But the entire property, that's not something we ever saw coming down the pike. And when it happened, we were caught off guard. And what we were worried about is it was timber industrial. You couldn't do anything but timber. And if it was owned by the railway, and they were in fact a federal railway that was interstate, that provided passenger service interstate, freight service interstate, then they were not subject to the same environmental review that any other developer might have out there. And knowing that there was toxicity, I didn't even get into the works with the Department of Toxic Control that we had with the state to determine where those toxic spots were that was going to limit the development. When they took over that property in the southern end and basically told us, you know, we're a railway and we'll work with you, but, you know, we could do what we want. And if you're familiar with the Railroad Act of 1886 or whatever it is, they were starting to build rails across America. And they didn't want to have to follow the same regulations as most developers did because of what a great asset it was going to be. A railroad, you could actually go from New York City to Kansas City. Wow. So those are archaic rules that are still in effect. And our point in the lawsuit was, we don't really think you're a railway. We think you're an excursion train. And therein is what has created a lot of, well, I don't say animosity, disagreement between the city and the skunk train. But we want to work with them. And I mentioned earlier tonight that we worked with them very well on maintaining the access to the coastal trail. And we'd like to work with them in the future. But we hope that we're able to work with them with our community. And it's the community that has the vision through us. We're still going to have an LCP amendment at some point because of the zoning out there. So I want to work with them. I want to work with the community. I want to work with everybody. But history sometimes is a good lesson for us. It's very complicated. We've spent a lot of money, hours of meetings. The idea for the coastal trail pretty much came from the community. And what a great asset that is. We'd like to continue to build on that. So I think it was a great report. Sorry for that long history, but I think we needed to make that clear tonight. So if anybody's having a difficulty understanding the problems that exist between us and the skunk train, in my mind, I tried to lay out what they are, why they're there, and let's try and put that behind us and show the type of resiliency that this community expects from both us and the folks at the skunk train. So thank you for your report, good report. I like what I see. Let's make it happen.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Braffman.
Thank you. Thank you for a great report. And thank you, Vice Mayor, for your clarification. This is great that mill site has been sitting empty. You need to do something with it. It'll bring jobs, great economic prosperity, like I said in the report. Field dock, we do need a field dock. The fishing industry is still there. So we need to get things going finally. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Alvin Smith.
Thank you. First of all, Josh, fantastic. I mean, absolutely fantastic. I was sort of shocked that you did mention parks in there's a couple paragraphs about parks and daylighting creeks. I saw that twice and things like that. So I just wanted to say, I'm going to backtrack just a little bit. A long time ago when this measure AAAB tax was being considered to the voters, I was asked, what do I want on the mill site? Do I want recreational fields? Do I want soccer fields? Because they bring so many people to town. I mean, we had as many as 90 teams here at one point. on our school fields. Do we want to build fields on the mill site? And I said, oh, we don't need those. I was wrong, but we don't need this. But I just want to point out that the mill site has so much potential for more recreation. And the coastal trail is just an example of that. But, you know, I can see all kinds of parks, daylighting creeks and things like that as bringing us even more tourism. On the other hand, tourism is not everything. It is good quality of life for the residents as well, but tourism is not what we're after here. We're after, as you know, economic diversity, workforce housing, things that bring a better income, jobs that need education, working with the colleges at bringing light industry here. These are all the most important things. This will make it possible for families to stay here and live here, not tourism. Tourism is not sustainable as a as a living, you know, for anybody except the business owner. So thank you for this report, and I do want to say maybe a few more paragraphs about the economic advantages of recreation and potential, but where that's at, I don't know. It's not sustainable either. You know, I mean, it's fluff. It's nice. It's better quality of life. So one example that an amazing example of using Redwood as a center to town was just happening when the skunk train allowed the Lions to put their fair on Redwood, on the mill site, and all these people were in downtown just enjoying going around the town and going to the fair. And I heard that people knew about the fair from as far away as an event I had to go to in Garberville, and they were asking me about this fair. I mean, so word gets out. I don't know if it's the Lions advertising or where they got it, but so it is. You're right. That is the gateway, and that is where we want to focus our energies. And so I'll stop there.
Okay, Vice Mayor, please.
I just wanted to ask a quick question. My understanding is that the aquaculture industry hub, the projects that you're showing here for the aquaculture and for the marine science center, both of those would be enabled without any change to zoning, right? That's essentially giving economic solutions within the parameters that are already here on that land. Is that correct?
It requires a use permit, but it is an allowable land use in the land use tables for timber resources industrial.
That's fantastic. Okay. And I bring that up because, you know, I had mentioned that I felt like you pivoted really nicely as things shifted. And that's one example where you know, this is a tool that can be used to with the zoning that's there. So thank you.
And I might add, that's not the first time aquaculture was discussed. If anyone, again, knows some history about this community, there was a very big aquaculture project with a lot of money invested in it that came before the council, but it did have some support, but not enough support at the time to actually get off the ground. There were some, at that time, the commercial fishermen totally opposed it. They thought they'd be in competition. They were already dwindling in their commercial fishing fleet. And also the environmental community, and rightfully so, was concerned because the water was going to get recirculated, that if a disease or something got into one of these tanks in the aquaculture and then got recirculated out to the ocean, that you were going to infect natural wildlife and not just the ones you had in your aquaculture. So that project was shot down, and I forget how many years ago, but it's not the first time. And so we did consider it, in fact, very closely at one time. And I understand now that it's not just fish, but we're talking about plant life as well, kelp and other plant life. And certainly things are changing. Our food chain is going to have to change with the population increase on planet Earth. And thinking of plant life in the ocean as a food source, for some in Japan, natural, but over here, kind of hard to wrap your mind around. So anyway. Thanks for, you know, all the work again. The aquaculture is very fascinating. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else from council? No? Alvin Smith? No? Okay, Mr. Metz, thank you very much. Very much appreciated. It is 8 minutes to 8. We normally take a break. So I think it's appropriate we take a 10-minute break right now and come back. Sorry, Natalie. All right. So we will recess and reconvene at straight up 8 o'clock. Thank you. Okay, everyone, we are back. Thank you for your patience. We are moving on to 8C, receive project update and status report from Parents and Friends Incorporated on the Cypress Street Residential Care Facility for the Elderly Project at 350 Cypress Street. And we have with us here today, Natalie McLaughlin, please.
Good evening, council members. Thank you for the opportunity to give you an exciting update about this long-awaited project, one that the city has been invested in for many years. June, if you could go to the next slide. So I just wanted to give you an overview of the current team that's working on this project. So of course, we have the city, and currently we're working with Lacey Peterson, but we had also been working closely with Isaac Whitby before Lacey became the grant manager. So now we have Parents and Friends, of course, and I believe on Zoom we have Rick Moon, the CEO of Parents and Friends, and then we also in person have Sage Statham, who's the incoming CEO, as well as Adam Ashford, and he's the Coast Services. Oh, I'm going to slaughter this. Sorry about that, Adam. Coastal Support Services Director. So he will have a lot of oversight when the RCFE gets up and going. And then also on Zoom, we have Morgan Ellig, who works for K. Bouget Architects. And he's really been in this construction phase doing construction management and working with the rest of the team to make sure that all of the details to the construction are according to plan. And the general contractor who was procured for this project is Adams Commercial General Contracting, and they have a great team that we've been working with. They're not currently in this presentation. However, in the future, near project completion, we thought we could have them come on and introduce themselves. They've been really great to work with, and I can see them doing additional great work in the city of Fort Bragg. They have 18 subcontractors. Most of those are all on the North Coast, with many local subcontractors. The contractor who's been out there the most is a local subcontractor, who's done all the demolition and site work. And of course, there's sub-consultants, who consulted on all of the plans. If you could go to the next slide, please, June. Thank you. So as many of you heard, construction started in late April, and the completion date, we just actually got an update at the end of last week, and it's the second week in February, and that was due to normal things that happen in construction when you start digging. So we're super happy about the hard work that Adams has been doing to stay on the timeline. And the grant deadline is May 31st, and we'll be able to meet that deadline for sure, even with all of the years and changes and all the bumps in the road. The whole team is on board for meeting that. So for the next little where we were, I thought it would be best that Rick Moon, who's been a part of this project since it was just an idea. He'll go into some of the details of how this project came. I know many of you have been a part of that, so he's just going to touch on some highlights, and then we'll get into where we are now.
Madam Clerk, do you have Mr. Moon in the room?
I just promoted him so he can turn on his video and speak to the council.
Thank you.
Need to make my adjustments. So, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, this whole thing started in about 2007 when we first got a CDBG grant for a study to possibly do something with Cypress Street property. A few years later, we updated the study around 2012. We updated the study, and then the CDBG put out a notice that they had to get rid of some funds, and the city went out for a request for people that had shovel-ready projects. And we were shovel-ready because we had the planning and so forth already completed. And so we went for it, and the planning department did an outstanding job. I don't remember her name. She's at the brewery now. But
Jennifer
anyway,
Owen.
she did a really outstanding job. Very knowledgeable. So we finally got the grant a few years later, and then started to go out for bid. And all that took some time. So this is a very fast shovel-ready project that started in 2007. So like all good things, they take a long time. So here we are now, we're nearing completion. And we're looking forward to getting the house open and getting people inside, living and receiving services. So that's the history up to where we are.
Great. Thank you, Rick.
Uh-huh.
And I thought I would give you a little bit of insight about the bid process. I think I heard John mention that you guys are seeing that it's a struggle to get contractors to respond, but also construction prices are at an all-time high. So the grant was awarded at just over $3 million originally. And then in 2019, CDBG put out a notice asking if any grant awardees needed additional construction dollar funding. And the city at that time submitted for the cap, which was at 20% of your grant total, and was awarded those additional $600,000. So the current budget is at 3.6 million, and that includes any general administration and all of the additional design dollars that would be needed. So, pardon me. So our first bid went out. We wanted to go out with the full scope as was applied for, and we got two bids, one at 4.1 million and the lowest bidder at just over $4 million. So obviously, and that was just construction. And so we had to go out a second time. And with the second round, we reduced the scope to 2 buildings, which are 4-bedroom, 3-bath, all ADA, with an alternate of 1 building and all infrastructure, so that future site building could happen to meet the full original scope of work. And that is where we landed. We landed on the alternate 1 because the scope in round 2 bid was over budget as well. And that contract was made with Adams, as I mentioned, at $2,849,000. Which left a little bit of room for what we now have seen in all construction projects. There's changes that happen, and so the greatest benefit that parents and friends will have is to be able to build on to the infrastructure that will already have been in place with these grant dollars. So we're excited. I know that many of you have probably driven by, and we're actually hoping some framing is going to happen this week and next. And so it's really coming to life. I know that that Rick may have some more to say about what they see in the future as far as it is for what we are now calling, we're in phase 1. And they may be looking to the future for phase 2, which may be one of the buildings or both of the buildings, but they, I believe, are already starting their efforts in that way, because this is a much needed facility in the community. Rick, do you want to speak to the clients who are the potential clients, or any of those who may be on the wait list, ready to move into this facility when you can do so?
Yes, we have no problem with finding people to move into the facilities. There is a great demand for facilities like this. It is specifically for the developmentally disabled, although it can be for anybody who is of the age group and has Alzheimer's or other aging disability. We are looking at other forms of funding, including the USDA and some others. It's important to get the infrastructure in so that the future won't be as costly as the current. Many of the clients that we have now, we have a residential care facility for the elderly now on Azalea Street, and they are people from the community. They've like retired from Safeway and things like that. They also happen to be developmentally disabled, but they are long-term community members who've lived and worked, shopped in the community. So those are the people that we serve, and the people that will be served by our new facility, and the ones we hope to build in the future.
Thank you, Rick. I also have always appreciated the fact that, these their clients are currently living in housing, but will benefit more from living in a facility like this. So naturally, when they move into the facility, that will open up additional housing in the community. So it's really a huge need met with this grant, and I've been along the ride for years, and it's so exciting just to know that we have a great team and everyone's working together to make this meet this project's completion for this phase 1. So there was a few more photos, June, if you don't mind sharing. I know I should have walked you through those while I was chatting. Thank you. So this is, the plan. Many of you have probably, thank you, June, had the opportunity. So there is a plan set at City Hall that can be viewed if individuals would like to. And then if you go to the next, June. Thank you. So this is the site before. And then as, site preparation activities took place. Go ahead and go to the next, please, June. Thank you. So the original project was, it was for 3, but it now has moved to the southern portion of the property, and there they were beginning laying out where the foundation would be. And so then you can see the location of the first home there. And go ahead and go to the next. And so this is, it's happening, and we're really excited. As you can see from that site plan for phase 1, it's at the south portion of the property, while leaving the potential for the future phases of work to take place. Go ahead and go to the last. Thank you. Oh, I think there might have been one more. Sorry, June. Thank you. Thank you. I just wanted people to have the opportunity that I'm sorry. I was confused there, June. Sorry about that. So if anyone would like has any questions, Lacey Peterson at the city, she knows the project team, so she can get your questions. If anyone wasn't able to give comment on this, we're happy to find the right person on the team to answer any questions that anyone has. So thank you so much for your time, and we're so excited to be at this point in the phase one.
Thank you for the report. Council, have any questions? No? Again, you're right. It's very exciting. Very important part of our community is going to get housed there, and it's exciting to see it happening. So thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody from the public like to comment on this item in the room? Madam Clerk?
If you wish to make a comment on this agenda item, please use the raise hand feature now. Jacob Patterson.
Hi, it's Jacob again, although I went home. I just wanted to comment. I'm glad to hear the update on this, although I do have some questions that hopefully can get answered. Now that this is just phase one, I didn't see the landscaping component on their chart, and I'm assuming that's just because they were just showing the building and site plan. But I just want to make sure that the landscaping isn't being delayed because of there are significant tree removals on the site, which were not discussed as part of the original planning entitlement. And in order to mitigate for that and to deal with the removals, the new landscaping plan is really a critical component. So I just want to make sure that we're not going to shortchange the community on that. And that kind of related to some of the earlier discussions tonight about the tree committee. This example, or this project is an example of the opposite of some of the comments where we talked about, I think the terms were explosion of competence on the part of our staff. This was an explosion of incompetence when it came to the city's own planning processes related to it because of just it not dealing with the full scope of the project, and now it's changed considerably. I'm really excited for this project. I'm really excited for this housing, but I just really want to make sure that we're dealing with the holistic impacts and how it fits into the community overall, not just from our housing needs, but from the dramatic change of our local grown as well as built environment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk?
No further hands raised, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Anybody else in the room like to speak on this item? Okay, any other comments from council? Otherwise, we will move on. No? Okay. Thank you again very much for being here. Okay, 8D, receive report and provide direction to staff regarding options for preserving Eagles Hall as a public assembly venue, including historical landmark status, existing zoning regulations, and other options. Ms. McCormick.
Thank you, Mayor. This item was brought forward to the city manager's office by Council Member Tess Albin Smith and followed up with Council Member Peters. The item is for informational purposes and to instigate a council discussion. Marie Jones has prepared the staff report, and I will turn the floor to her to deliver the presentation.
Thanks so much, Sarah. So fun to listen to the GP report. Brings back old memories, I'm sure, as you all can imagine. So I'll make this brief because I know it's the end of the night. I did try and do a comprehensive analysis of what would happen given various scenarios around Eagles Hall redevelopment and reuse. I just want to mention that it has been served the community as an event facility since 1914. And as you know, the building is an escrow for purchase. And I got involved because some city council members expressed an interest in learning about how the building might be secured. Currently, the building houses a large performance space, a yoga dance studio, a commercial kitchen, and several bathrooms. I've got a little history in there about the various operations that have been run at Eagles Hall. I'm sure you read it and found it amusing. I did. Essentially, what I'm hoping to do is explore the feasibility and benefits of designating Eagles Hall as a landmark, and then also what are some of the zoning and parking requirements that might limit the redevelopment of the facility for any different types of uses. I do want to clarify to begin with that Eagles Hall has already been identified through a historic resource survey as a property qualifying for a historic designation. So the city council doesn't really have to do anything to give it what protection is available within the zoning code with regards to a historic designation. Essentially, historic designation places additional regulatory requirements and also offers many benefits to any existing or future owner. I want to outline some of the benefits first. One is it provides flexibility in the use of the historic building codes, which are more flexible than the standard building codes. It provides the city council an opportunity to waive development codes within the ILUDC if the facility is going through a substantial rehabilitation. It also allows the city to approve of a land use which is not otherwise allowed, again, if the building is going through a major facilitation. And it also allows the project to qualify for various federal tax and mortgage incentives. And I want to just make it clear that these benefits are already afforded to this building because it already is a historic structure and has been deemed as such by the city of Fort Bragg. And the city council has the opportunity to waive land use standards such as parking or setback requirements if they decide to do so. And again, only if in such cases as the property owner is undertaking a significant rehabilitation. In my staff report, I require all the findings that are needed to be made to make any of those incentives. And in addition, if for any changes to the exterior of the building, a certificate of appropriateness is required. And this essentially ensures that the exterior architectural features of the building are retained, or if they are changed, they're changed in such a way so as not to detract from the historic features of the building. So in other words, to do anything to the outside of the building, they have to get an architect and it has to go through this certificate of appropriateness approval process. But I do want to emphasize that certificate of appropriate only applies to changes to the exterior of the building. It does not limit interior modifications, and it does not limit future uses of the building. So I'm just trying to let you know what the code does and what it doesn't do. There are certain things it does, and there are certain things that right now it doesn't do. In addition to that, you could apply for state historic resource designation, although in looking at those requirements, which are on page 5 of the staff report, it's pretty clear that Eagles Hall probably doesn't qualify as a state historic resource. And again, even if it did qualify as a state historic resource, it would only control external features of the building, not internal features. I want to turn now to zoning limitations and considerations. Essentially, what's important to note is that Eagles Hall is actually located on 2 separate parcels. The primary building is located on one parcel, and then there's a kind of a grassy field and a residential house back by the alley, which is located on the other parcel. Together, if those 2 parcels were merged, it would result in a 0.34 of an acre, which would allow up to 4 residential units. So that's what could be permissible from a residential perspective. One of the other things we look at is floor area ratio, which is essentially how much of the property site is covered in building. And right now, the development is legal non-conforming with regard to that. I've also got on page 5 a number of permitted uses and uses that would require a minor use permit or a major use permit. And mostly these are compatible with residential uses, so condominium, tiny homes, daycare facility, adult daycare, multifamily housing, artisan shop, neighborhood market, neighborhood cafe, that sort of thing. Eagles Hall currently doesn't provide parking, and this is a legal non-conforming condition. So in other words, as long as the property remains an event space, parking would not be required. However, if there was a change in land use, parking would be required unless the city council agreed to waive that requirement, which it could do if there was a major renovation being undertaken there. I did take the liberty of sort of scoping out what parking might be accommodatable on this parcel, and it looks like it could accommodate up to 8 parking spaces if the existing residential unit and ramp were removed. So that may result in ADA issues in terms of accessibility of the building, and it may not be possible actually to remove that ADA ramp. It might have to be relocated. There is an ADA ramp on the front west side of the building that's much smaller. I was not able to get into the building, so I don't know if they go to the same facilities and if that would serve or not. But at any rate, 8 parking spaces may be possible, which could be enough to park for multifamily units. So I think that's about what I have to say. Given the parking requirements of this site, if it was reused for something besides residential, most of the other uses such as shop or cafe or restaurant have much higher parking ratios, and so you wouldn't be able to accommodate them in this facility. It's pretty limited in terms of what it could be reused for beyond residential and its current use as a event space. And that's the sum total of my report. I'm happy to answer any questions you have, and thank you for listening. Hopefully it wasn't too boring.
Thank you, Marie, very much. I have a question, Tess, since this was your item brought forward, if you can help us understand what your intent here was.
Thank you. Thanks for asking. And thank you, Marie, for a great report. I had heard that this building had come up as a potential. I didn't know that it was actually done deal, that it was already identified as a historic building in Fort Bragg. But I wanted to find that answer, and also I wanted to find out what potential uses could happen. And is it possible for somebody to just raise it to the ground and rebuild a dwelling of some sort, or a block of apartments or something? That's my first question.
Good question. So you would have to get a certificate of appropriateness to do that, and there are certain standards that go with that. Usually what's required is to fully document the building with photographs. That certificate of appropriateness would need to be adopted or granted, I guess would be the proper way of saying it, by the Planning Commission, and could be appealed to the City Council. So theoretically, you could stop that process if you wanted to.
Okay. And we don't know what the plan is for the new buyer. I'm not trying to impede on someone's rights, but I imagine that it has been disclosed that this is already listed, at least in town. Do you know if that's true?
It's in escrow, is my understanding. I don't know that it's closed yet. I would say from the various letters that have been submitted from people that it hasn't closed escrow. I would say just from the perspective of development, a historic building, they might have some challenges converting it into housing, having to do with structural issues, and whether I'm not sure that the county would require them to sprinkle it or not. Typically, they require sprinkling of historic structures, but usually that's about $10 a square foot, so I don't know that it would be prohibitively expensive. There's a lot of cosmetic work that needs to be done on the back of the building, as seen in my little photo essay that I did for you all. And I don't know what it looks like structurally underneath, so one assumes they've done their due diligence. Typically, a building of this size is pretty expensive to tear down, actually. And I would be surprised if that was their plan. I think it would be more likely that they would just convert it internally to apartments.
Internally? Huh.
Exactly.
Oh, okay. I was wondering what it could be. But the question, I guess, was I wonder if it was disclosed that this is historic already, and they just don't care because they're going to do something to the inside, not the outside. So.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. Sorry.
And do they have any other historic buildings? Do you know of?
Oh, there's a big long list of them. Actually, a group of ladies went around, I don't know, around 2010 or so, with some architects and designated a bunch of buildings in Fort Bragg as historic. And basically, they're all buildings that were built pre-19, at that point, 1910, so over 100 years old. And there are a fair number of buildings in Fort Bragg that are that old, including 2 that I own.
Well, people know that it's been used by more than Gloriana. I mean, the Celtic music fundraiser is huge. It's packed. The Symphony of the Redwoods has used it for Pops concerts and even their symphony season when the Cotton was closed. Political meetings, I attended several before I was elected there. It's a big meeting place, and I've been to weddings there and things like that. And I know the history of, famous singers and all that were there. But I've even mentioned that to Sarah, that if if the Blue Economy meeting gets much bigger, then we really need a place to have a giant meeting. There isn't anything like that unless we put up a tent. So the Eagles was in the background of my mind the whole time, that if we needed to, we could move there. So I'm just saying we're about to lose like the only place that is big enough to have a giant meeting. And the Board of Forestry has met there, with the state. So it is just so fantastic. So it's a great loss, and I understand. And I just wanted to bring this up as awareness. Basically, what can we do? We can't do anything. The Gloriana is trying to buy it as they're a backup. But we can't do anything. But we've already done what we could do, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it already is designated historic. I mean, you could change your ordinance to try and make it have like more meat in terms of what can happen with a building, but you just have to keep in mind that it would affect a lot more than just this building. So that, that has pros and cons. And I didn't go that far because I wasn't sure exactly what you were looking for. So,
well, my main reason was I just wanted to know what has been disclosed to the buyer in terms of what they can and cannot do. And so they're aware of that as they're purchasing this building. And that's why I wanted to bring up the historic section. And, Councilperson Lindy and myself have performed there many times, so we have a lot of good memories, and we know it's just been a great place to be. So I have I don't know if there's any direction needed. It sounds like we're just making awareness here. Nothing more we can do unless you have any more ideas, the rest of the council. I'm done.
Does council have any more questions for Marie's staff report?
I believe Councilmember Peters does.
Well, you gave her an opportunity to say why she wanted it on an agenda, and I just wanted to take that opportunity myself. I'm kind of going to draw a nexus to something we discussed earlier at the mill site. One of the things the community had a great interest in with the mill site initially was a convention center with a performing arts center with it. At the time, the redevelopment agency was still going strong, and we thought there'd be some redevelopment money to actually accomplish this. But Gloriana Opera Company is a local theater group that I've been involved with for many years. During the heyday of Gloriana, we used Cotton Auditorium. It was a great place for a production because it had all the features to have a great live theater production. But there was a car accident, unfortunately, when someone just kept going down Harold Street and ran into the building, you might recall, and it was discovered that there was asbestos there. And it immediately closed it down to any type of performance. They did some renovations. At that time, Gloriana went over to the old Lang's Lumber Building, for locals that remember that, on Franklin Street. They tried to find another theater somewhere else. And then when the Cotton Auditorium was finally renovated, they realized that some changes had been made. The fly space was way up high, so you almost need a cherry picker to hang lights. There were curtains that could pivot this way and bring a stage smaller. Those curtains were taken out. And so for logistic reasons, it became impractical. Also, the symbiotic relationship with the school district and Gloriana seemed to disappear. At one time, there were, the lighting director, the director, the producer all had keys to Cotton Auditorium. The school district took them away. So you had to go find a janitor to get in there and get a rehearsal. So for those reasons, we left Cotton Auditorium and we landed, as Tess pointed out, at Eagles Hall. And I just was thinking, we don't have any performing arts centers here that are really good for theater. There's a lot of talent. There's a lot of interest. The shows have always been very successful. And I didn't realize as well where we were in the process, that it was actually an escrow. When I was approached by a member of the Gloriana Opera Company, I was asked to join the Eagles because there was going to be a vote and there were only 8 local Eagles left. And it was only $25 to join unless a bunch of us join and then vote not to sell it. And so unfortunately the date was wrong and we were getting some people together and the meeting had already occurred and they'd already decided to sell it. And I found that out, and then I just thought, maybe we should talk about it and see if there's any way we could save that building. And as was pointed out, it's not just for theater. Congressman Huffman, when he came here for his town hall, was in there one time, you might recall. The Women's March that started at Bainbridge Park ended up in there. And it does have limitations as a performing arts center. There's no doubt about it. They have to bring in baffle curtains and cut off half of it. Backstage is very limited. It's not ideal at all. I'd like to see us build a theater at some point. So from what I've heard tonight, I think we've done due diligence as best we could, the theater people and also the city. And it looks like, we're going to leave it up to the owners if escrow closes to make the decision on what to do. And at that point, once escrow closes, maybe we can approach them and see if there's any way before they turn it into whatever they're going to turn it into that we might have a few more productions in there. I don't know. But there are limited spaces when you think about it. It's perfectly located. I know the parking might be a problem for some of the residents there, although I never heard that being a problem when we performed there. They got the little sign out there so you can tell them up, when it's showing and everything like a theater has. So it was just so perfect for performing theater productions. But at this point, I don't think there's anything we can do. I'm sorry to say that. I'll listen to what the public has to say. Maybe there's some creative minds that have yet to speak here from the public. But I don't think there's much we can do at this point. It's in escrow. I'm not one to try and control property rights when someone has made an investment that I'm sure is pretty significant to buy that place. So that's why I wanted it on the agenda.
Thank you for that. Any questions from council? Madam Clerk, if you could open this item up to the public, please.
Yes, if you'd like to speak on this agenda item, please raise your hand and we'll call on you for 3 minutes. Leslie Kashiwada.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Yes, I'm Leslie Kashiwada, and I was very pleased to see the report regarding options for preserving Eagles Hall as a public assembly venue. I think Marie's report was very good. But I wanted to mention that the history of Eagles Hall provided in the report was drawn from an article written by the Fort Bragg Mendocino Coast Historical Society, was published in the Advocate News on April 21st of this year. And I did provide a written version of the comments I'm making right now, so it has the link to that article. And while the article mentioned Gloriana Musical Theater in passing, the history of this report did not specifically call out Gloriana in quite the same way. So I just wanted to speak to that aspect for a moment. Gloriana has been offering high-quality musical productions in our community for 45 years, starting Lindy mentioned. And Gloriana produces It says my internet's unstable, so I don't know. We might have lost a bit there. Gloriana produces musicals for adults and children, along with other special shows, reviews, and concerts until COVID halted their planned productions in 2020. Gloriana is also the organization that manages the rental of the hall for all of those other kinds of events. So whether it's the Celtic concerts or the political meetings or the weddings, proms, dances, all of that is actually organized through Gloriana. They've provided, especially fundraisers for nonprofits at a very low cost. So Gloriana has maintained Eagles Hall as a public assembly venue since which it's been since its founding, and Gloriana's continued that tradition. So when Eagles Hall went up for sale, I want to mention that Gloriana began exploring purchase of the building in cooperation with other nonprofit organizations. They moved very deliberately because they're well aware of the various maintenance and rehab issues for the building, given the lack of upkeep by the Eagles. Unfortunately, this outside investor came in and purchased the building before they could pull a coalition together, and they did put in a counter bid and are in line to purchase the building should escrow fall through with the outside vendor. So what I wrote was, I think the historic landmark designation is essential. I'm happy to hear that it actually exists. People in the community do want to see this historic building maintained as a public assembly venue. And if Gloriana does get the building, any way that the city can help them get the funding they would need to do the renovations and the repairs and the maintenance would be fantastic. So thank you for that wonderful report, Marie, and we'll see what happens.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Jacob Patterson.
Hi, it's Jacob Patterson again. I also want to thank Marie for the wonderful report. I learned several things that I didn't know before that assuaged some of my concerns. I was concerned that because the Inland Land Use and Development Code doesn't require demolition permits, that they could just tear it down and to do what they wanted with it later. Many of you might not know that I used to work for a large real estate developer in Los Angeles in their in-house legal department. And so I am well versed in the procedural tactics that developers use for things, like demolishing it first when you don't need a permit and then trying to get your other stuff permitted. But a couple of things that I think I'd like to encourage the council to still stay involved a little bit. One, if they want to do, any developer would want the 4 units, which will require a use permit hearing, which means the city could say no or attach conditions on it. I encourage the city to, one, publish this historic designation list on our website so developers and property owners know about it. I would not be surprised if they don't know about it. I doubt the city puts a record in the deed of properties about the designation status, but that's a major development constraint. And if they did not know about that, they might use that as a reason to not close the escrow and pull out of the deal. That's a huge constraint, but it's also a huge benefit because developers who do anything to rehab the building can get major tax incentives for doing so. You basically get property tax credits. Potentially, they'd have to go through a process for that. But I really think that there's an opportunity. The building is huge. If we can only do 4, or if they could only do 4 units total, there's already 1 unit there. That they could only do 3 more. There's probably enough room to have 3 financially feasible, marketable units upstairs and still preserve the downstairs as a large space. So I actually think it would be beneficial for people to engage in discussions with these developers if they're willing. I assume that their contact information might be available from the city or the real estate agent, and that everyone could come out a winner, including the people who purchased the property. Because they will require discretionary permit. That's quite clear. I was very happy to hear that there is already the certificate of appropriateness required for that, because I didn't know about that. But anyway, I think this is a good dialogue, and there's an opportunity to communicate and perhaps express community desire to have a win-win situation. Thanks.
Okay, Madam Clerk. Anyone else?
Megan Caron.
Hi, my name is Megan Cronin. I think a lot about the Eagles Hall. I walk by it a lot, and I think about its importance and its significance for the Finnish community, but for the Fort Bragg community in general. I'm glad to hear it's considered a historical landmark. That's great. As much as we need housing, it should never become developed into private residences. It was built by the Finnish community for the community, and it should remain as such. Over the years, we've been witnessing the loss of community gathering spaces for arts, entertainment, community celebrations in Fort Bragg, and Eagles Hall is one of the last places where these things can take place. In an era where these community spaces have become even more sacred because of their scarcity, we need to protect them, and anyone with a conscience who's purchasing this kind of property should be taking its history and community importance into consideration before making big plans for it. You know, Fort Bragg's lost so much of its history. It's kind of tragic that loss seems to be one of Fort Bragg's few consistencies. It's terribly sad to see this piece of Fort Bragg Finnish history recreated into someone else's idea of an investment opportunity. And it really should have never been put on the market in the first place for a private party to purchase it. With all the community groups seeking space, it's an absolute travesty that it was even purchased by a private party. So anyway, my hope for the future is that it can be saved for the community in some degree. Anyway, thanks for bringing it up, Tess. I appreciate it.
Okay, Madam Clerk.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, no other hands are raised at this moment.
Okay, anybody else in the room like to speak on this item? No? Okay. So we're not looking for any action here, is that correct? This was just informational? Okay, and I'd like to point out a couple of things. There's been a lot of reference to investors or developers. I don't think anybody knows who's actually trying to buy this piece of property. It could very well be somebody trying to move to the city of Fort Bragg and saw the opportunity and they want to turn this into their home. And I'd hate to see the city council or, the city at large try and get in the way of something like that. There's a process in place. It goes on the market and everybody has an opportunity to try and purchase the property. I do have a little bit of concern about how this came about tonight. I don't think I'll get into it because it seems like it's going to stay rather mellow. But some concerns that were brought up to me today was that most of these questions could have been answered by simply walking into City Hall. Marie, you're worth absolutely every penny we spend on you, and I appreciate you. But we did spend taxpayer dollars on hiring a consultant to come in and answer questions that could have been answered in City Hall. And those were the concerns that were brought up to me today. I echo those concerns, and I would just hate for the city to get in the way of a private contract, and that does not appear that's what's going to happen tonight, so I'm very appreciative of that. Anyone else?
Hey, Bernie, I'll just let you know that you're not paying me any more now than my fully burdened overhead rate when I worked for the city. So you didn't spend a lot of money, so don't worry too much.
I'm not worried about it. Like I said, you're worth every penny. The issue is not you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Vice Mayor, please.
I would just like to say that, I think timing is everything in a conversation like this. And with this being brought up, I would just urge us to do our best to kind of, let's see, how can I say, look for a proactive approach. If there are other buildings that you feel the same urgency about, maybe there are ways for us to be good partners to the current owners to help with preservation of access and public use, or maybe this is an opportunity for us to look and see if there are any other venues that we would like to be proactive in seeking partnerships on to help them remain healthy and viable. Because with this one, while I really appreciate the intention behind it, it makes me really uncomfortable as far as timing goes with, you know, it having been on the market and it being an escrow. It feels like we're riding a line there that's a little bit difficult. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say. But thank you. This was educational, I think, for all of us, and I appreciate the conversation.
Okay. Moving on, we will move on to 8E, receive report and consider adoption of city council resolution approving professional services agreement with Creative Thinking Incorporated, does business as the Idea Cooperative to provide strategic and creative marketing services for Visit Fort Bragg, and authorizing the city manager to execute contract amount not to exceed $180,000. Ms. McCormick, please.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the Idea Cooperative, located in Petaluma, has provided the city with marketing and advertising services, design, creative services, and social media content creation since December 2019. This is the third year that we would be contracting with the Idea Cooperative for this service. When you all met and passed the budget, we allocated the money in the budget for this contract. So there is fiscal money there for it. One thing I really wanted to point out that has happened over the past, basically since the COVID pandemic happened, when we needed to really pivot and change our messaging. We didn't really want people to come here because we needed people to shelter at home, or we wanted to educate people about how to be responsible visitors with the drought and how to not use so many disposable containers because there was no more eating in restaurants, and people were, going to restaurants and then going to the coastal trail and putting their too much trash in the garbage, and then the ravens were pulling it all over. We were really able to use the Idea Cooperative to help with that messaging, which was very, very useful. We are also able to bring them in for events this year, such as when the Magic Market there was a risk the Magic Market wasn't going to happen. And then the Visit Fort Bragg wanted to really support and sponsor that event. And Idea Cooperative came up with the marketing campaign and showed up and took photos and helped make that happen. When the Blue Economy and Symposium and Learning Festival came to town, there was a lot of support that we were able to use, both for local, support in City Hall to help develop the creative image, the messaging, the newsletters, highlight, our new harbor master, highlight the work that Tristan with the Nature Conservancy was doing, or the gals down at Princess Seafood. They were able to use that marketing to not only attract visitors here, but also bolster the quality of life and like who we are here. So I think that I just wanted to mention that because I think that we're doing a really neat thing with our marketing right here in Fort Bragg. We're not just, telling people to come here. We're showing them why there is a here, and we're giving people an opportunity to showcase their talents and what they do. So I want to say that from the first contract that we did, 4 years ago, they had to come and clean up all of the website and revamp everything. I think we're on a good path. And so I recommend approving this contract. And if you have any questions about anything, I'm happy to answer.
Councilmember Peters.
I know the answers to these questions. They're in the staff report, but since we didn't go through it, let's get it on record for the public. So before we get to public comment, the money in the general fund that we're spending on this is a result of the passage of Measure AA and AB. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And by adding a 2% increase in the TOT tax, which doesn't affect locals, only those that are visiting and staying in hotels, we designated that a certain percentage of that would go to marketing. Is that correct?
Correct.
And the money that you're talking about tonight, the $180,000, I asked Victor Damiani at the time when this was passed if the finance director could kind of track what's coming in on Measure AAAB, and that when the money's there, let us know. Isaac, is this money from there?
Yes, it is. It's 1%.
Okay, thank you very much. And also the community, and rightfully so, were skeptical of passing a measure that only had a companion measure and didn't require a 2/3 vote, that if the money ended up in the general fund, that we'd squander it away some other way rather than marketing. And do you recall the community's concern there? So this is not squandered money. Thank you for those answers. And I think the other thing that was requested by the community, if this was passed, is to make sure we didn't just use some flimsy, out of town marketing or tried to do it in-house, that in fact we hired a professional marketing firm, and this was expressed by the lodging community. So all those answers are correct, yes, and that is the reason this is on the agenda. The money is already set aside. It's been budgeted for. Thank you.
Vice Mayor, please.
Over the last couple of years, I've seen them kind of add on to the services they're giving us in a lot of different ways. There's a lot of value added. And I guess my question for you tonight is, have we been seeing, so for instance, I know that they've been working on, they've been partnering with the Alleyway Art Project on the walking map and incorporating that into our website as well. Have we seen any work, like change of order, extra charges in relation to that project?
No, in fact, when we were building out the mural art map, we were discussing how there was so much valuable information in the Alleyway Art Project and how nice it would be to bolster that site rather than to create a new one and siphon off of it.
And when they sent staff here, multiple staff members, I believe, for like the Blue Economy, and they were doing photography and videos and everything, did we get a change order for that? Did we get charged extra for that event?
No, it's incorporated into their scope of work.
So is it fair for me to assume that all their kind of creative solutions to each month's campaigns and the different events here they're included? They're
included. What we've been doing is choosing to highlight events that would draw people to come here, to visit here, and to enjoy their time here, while also using the businesses here and the people here and showcasing them.
Great.
One other question too. The effort also is exponentially more during the soft season. I think from November to February, we didn't have much going, and that this particular outfit has done a pretty good job in getting people to come here in that period that is typically dead. And I think our TOT tax results, Isaac, that's question is kind of for you. Does that kind of reflect that those months have been better than they typically used to be?
Yes, we've seen TOT revenues increased, the last 2-3 years. So we've been experiencing year to date best, and one could argue it's because of the marketing campaign that.
And especially in the winter season, it really dropped off. But the numbers have been pretty good. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. According to our data, in terms of occupancy levels for those times, we've exceeded the last 3-4 years.
Because I know the lodging industry was concerned and they were willing to go along with the 2% increase at the time, as long as we focused on that particular part of the calendar that tended to be a real downturn for our local economy. So I just wanted to assert that those requests, not demands, requests were honored by them. Okay, thank you.
The Visit Port Bragg focuses on shoulder season events. So whereas the summertime people naturally want to come out here, they're focused on the shoulder seasons, both in the fall and in the spring.
Any other questions? Councilmember Raffnet,
Hi.
please.
What was the original? Was it the original budget for it last year, 80,000, and then we raised it, or was it 100,000 and we raised it?
Last year, when we had COVID and we did all the furloughs, we basically weren't going to do anything for them. And then we decided that going dark and not having any marketing campaign would be tragic, because we would lose all of our investment and all of the infrastructure we put in place. So they signed on a 4-month contract for a limited time at a reduced rate. I think it was really small. It was like 30,000. It was small. And so just to keep the lights on, kind of thing. And then as we started rebounding, there was several change orders that came in that added more money to the budget.
Okay. So 180 for a year's standard price for any advertising company or marketing.
Oh, I don't know because I'm not an expert in other ones. I know it's less than we paid Kubrick, and I know that it's less than the 2%. It's the 1%. So it's not all of the TOT text that's allotted to this activity, because we do use those funds for things like 4th of July, and the Visit Fort Bragg committee does special events, and then staff time to support all of that activity. You might have some more. You probably remember, Vice Mayor.
Well, I guess I just wanted to tack on that when they had the lower contract, they really made an investment in the city of Fort Bragg, and they haven't really stopped. I feel like we've seen value added at every turn. They did more work than they've basically done more work than we paid for from day one. I mean, is that a fair statement? And so, you know, and we've talked in the past about whether we could hire in-house for the same amount. And I think that we're getting a really stellar team. And we're getting, when they were at 30,000, they were giving us a lot more than we were paying for. So we wouldn't be able to get them back there. It was because of the circumstances.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions before we open it up to the public? Anybody in the room like to speak on this item? Madam Clerk?
Yes, if you'd like to speak on item 8E, please use the raise hand feature now, and we'll call on you for 3 minutes. Megan Caron?
Oh, hi, this is Megan Caron. I'm a Visit Fort Bragg committee member, and I'm also a downtown business owner. I'll admit that I'm completely dependent on tourist dollars, yet through my own needs, I'm still able to see that spending $180,000 annually on promoting tourism seems somewhat excessive, especially for a town that needs so many other vital things. The Idea Cooperative, they've done a nice job with promotions on the website, and I totally appreciate their efforts, but that $15,000 a month is a lot of money to spend on something where there's no way to calculate a return on, especially now that we're seeing a decrease in the TOT. I also feel that a lot of what we're paying for could be done locally or through Visit Mendocino. If there's a way to support local artists and have them do event posters and marketing, we certainly have people here that could do most of the work for probably a lot less. I'm positive if the community was asked how to spend $15,000 a month, how they would spend it, they would probably have much better ideas than our current one. And I feel that Measure AB is being limited in its current interpretation. I feel the council needs to revisit how funds from Measure AA are spent. After all, Measure AB is an advisory vote only. The people are advising the council, and the council should really re-examine how the funding is spent and how it can be utilized for the betterment of the community. We're contributing the increase in TOT to the Idea Cooperative Marketing, but honestly, it was most likely a global pandemic that brought droves of people here for the past 2 years. No, the TOT has gone down since the pandemic has waned. So, you know, it's hard to say what it was, this increase in TOT over the past few years, but I don't know, was it really marketing and a website? I don't know, hard to say, but anyway, I'm strongly for reducing the amount of money spent on marketing. Anyway, thanks for your time.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk?
Jacob Patterson?
Hi, it's Jacob Patterson. I just want to actually emphasize something Megan just said, because it was not presented in the council comments or questions or Sarah's presentation. It's my understanding, based purely on statements from city staff at recent meetings, that our TOT has decreased in our most recent thing. So if the TOT actually goes down after we've invested for several years with these people, to me, I don't see the return on investment coming from the efforts that the Idea Cooperative is doing. I think a lot of this is emotional decision making because we like them better than the last firm we have, which I think most of us thought was not doing a good job. They definitely present a pretty picture, and they're much more friendly. But have any of you actually experienced or participated in things like Restaurant Week in other communities? I have. Our Restaurant Week was embarrassing. The website didn't work. We didn't have menus for most of the things. So their stuff looks good, but it's not always functional. And I look at the contract as a person with a legal background, and that's my issue. That's what's up for your discussion and decision tonight. And I have no doubt you guys will approve it as written. But it doesn't really call for much. So yes, we didn't have a bunch of additional add-ons or change order cost increases when they were asked to do different things. But the contract doesn't really ask them to do much of anything. We don't put measurable deliverables. We don't put, other than they need to do one thing a month. And even things like the Blue Economy Symposium, yes, people came to town because of that, but they were all invited specifically to participate in it. It wasn't actually readily open to the public, so it wasn't open to tourists who might come here if they weren't invited to speak or be involved. I'm not sure how that has anything to do with Visit Fort Bragg. I mean, it was a cool event to the extent that we talked about our economic development, but it doesn't really relate, in my opinion, to what the purpose of this was. And I'm just really concerned that we're investing so much money on top of the efforts that are already being made by Visit Mendocino using Fort Bragg TOT dollars. We generate a lot, the coast and Fort Bragg itself, it generate a lot of the county's TOT money too. So we're kind of double dipping and doing a lot of things that might be fine, but the numbers don't lie. We actually did not get the results most recently. And that was based on the most experience they had, the most energy they put in, and the biggest investment we made, and our results decreased. So I just encourage you all, before you just rubber stamp and approve this, to really think, is this our priority? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk?
Seeing no more hands, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, again, anybody in the room like to speak on this item? No? Back to council? Vice Mayor, did you want to go?
Sure. I would just like to mention that at the Blue Economy event, there was a 2-day learning festival that was open to the public and incorporated people of all ages. So I would actually refute the public comment that said that was not at all tourist facing. I think there was a lot of value in that for locals and tourists alike, as well as the symposium part itself. So I just wanted to share that. I mean, I think it's probably pretty clear that I personally see a lot of value in the services we're being provided. The city of Fort Bragg has made an investment in our campaign, in our website, and it's the type of thing that needs maintenance and needs constant updating and fresh fuel. So I think that we would be foolish to throw the baby out with the bathwater here. I think we have a really good thing going, and I'd like to see it continue.
Councilmember Peters, please.
Keep in mind that the decision to spend money on marketing was not made by the city council. We got our marching orders from you, the voters. We put measure AA on the ballot. We had a companion measure, AB. That spelled out specifically how the dollars would be spent. And the 2% increase, as was pointed out by Sarah McCormick, 1%, half of it, was supposed to go to marketing. So we're just following the voters who voted on that. And there may have been some of those that object to this that voted no, but you were in the minority on that. So we're just following the will of the voters. Just the Blue Economy Symposium, were creative thinking actually invited? Because if they weren't, they showed up. They were here on their own initiative, on their own dollar. Were they specifically invited, or did they just show up? I don't know. I'm actually asking.
They were invited, and they showed up as part of their job and went to every learning festival event and to take photographs.
Right, and I saw them all over the place, and I was impressed. So they didn't just show up, for 10 minutes and then go to Starbucks. They were here, and they were very much a part of it. So I don't know. I had reservations initially because I've been in this town a long time when other marketing efforts were put forth. And I've never seen an increase. And yeah, there was the pandemic and there was PSPS events. And in terms of it going down right now, I'll just throw this out here too as a factor. At the time, gasoline was about $4 a gallon for a long time, maybe $3 a gallon. It went up to $6. It went up to almost $7. And in the Bay Area, even higher. And in Sacramento, even higher. That's where we draw most of our visitors, from those two key metropolitan areas. So if you want to throw out, you don't know why, I don't know either, but I'm willing to bet that the price of gas had something to do with the TOT tax going down. I think they've done a good job. They've been very personable. They're very responsive. They can change things very quickly, and they've been here long enough now to be very aware of our community and how we want to present ourselves, and I think they've done a good job. So I'm willing to support this tonight. And again, the money is there because of you, the voters, not because of us. We're spending the money you wanted us to spend on what you wanted us to spend it on.
Councilmember Alan Smith.
Thank you. If you attend any of those Visit Fort Bragg virtual meetings, you'd see the report by the Idea Cooperative about how many hits are happening. Every time they do a promotion, they target certain audiences and they get new hits, brand new, never happened before. They get repeat hits. They get people to spend time on each page. So people are looking at that. If you look downtown right now and you see all those people there, I'm sorry, I don't remember that ever happening. And in terms of a dip in the TOT, don't compare it to last year, which was an all-time high. Compare it to previous years. We are well above that. We're well above where we were at before. And we already had the Mendocino, Visit Mendocino website. They weren't doing anything for us. So, or if they were, it was what it was. This is way more. So when I listen to the hits and I look at the graphs, I see that they're having an impact and they're having people come. They have people participating by taking pictures of Fort Bragg. These are things, they're coming to town, they're doing things. Look at the ice cream store line. It's like amazing. Was it always like that? I don't remember that at all. So I think they're doing their job. They're doing it really well, and they take a lot of pride and ownership in our town, which is why they come to our events and they come here and take pictures and interview people. So I think they're doing their job. They're doing what we asked them to do, and I'd hate to see that go away. So I vote to keep it.
Councilmember Raffman.
Thank you. It's still a good thing. Thank you. I thought it was a lot of money at first when you see it, but hearing the vice mayor and the council members, it's worth it, especially with tough times coming up. I mean, it'll get people here with the gas prices and everything. And so, like council member Peter said, we voted for it. So I support it. Thank you.
Okay, so real quick, I think you hear a lot around distrust of government, and I think in a lot of cases it's justified. If you follow the county at all, they're having discussions around passing a general sales tax, and the public comments are that they don't trust the government to spend the money the way that they say that they will, even with something like AAAB. But here you have a government doing exactly what they said that they were going to spend the money on and continuing to do that. So I don't see a problem there. The trust is there. The council is continuing to do what the public asked them to do with the money. In a time where maybe the TOT is going down, I don't know if during that would be a really good time to pull the money from promotion. So I do support it. There may very well be a time when we have to allocate this money somewhere else, maybe to payroll, but that's not right now. Our bills are paid. We just approved tonight an agreement with the union to give them their pay raises. So again, our bills are paid. I think this is money that we can count on. It's already been budgeted. We can count on this money, and hopefully it brings in more money. That was the idea behind it. So I support it 100%. And again, I think it's been reiterated by every council member up here that this is what the public asked us to do with the money, and that's what we're continuing to do with the money. There's always something that somebody has a better idea of what the money can be spent on, but right now we're sticking to what was promised to the community, and I don't think that's getting enough credit. So I support it 100%.
I'll make a motion. In line with what you just said, the old saying, you got to spend money to make money. So I'll make a motion that we adopt resolution of the Fort Bragg City Council approving professional service agreement with Creative Thinking Inc., DBA, the IDEA Cooperative for Marketing Strategy Development, and authorizing the city manager to execute a contract amount not to exceed $180,000 already in the budget. I added the last 3 words.
All right. First by Councilmember Peters. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Raffinen. Any discussion on the motion? None. Madam Clerk, if you take roll, please.
Raffinen,
Yes.
Marcel Hay,
Yes.
Alvin Smith,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Norvell.
Yes. Okay, that concludes our conduct of business. It is 9:18. We will recess into closed and start closed in 3 minutes. Madam Clerk, I believe we're staying here. Is that correct? Alvin Smith can stay on and you'll lock everyone else out?
I will. I'll do that now. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, and then Ms. McCormick will have control of the Zoom. Is that correct?